It's really good right now.
Yep. Okay, thank you for being here, everybody. I would like to call this special meeting of the Board of Trustees to order at 7:33 p.m. today, September 8th. Can we have the roll, please?
Village President Torpy?
I am here.
Trustee Clark?
I'm here.
Trustee Collum?
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Here.
Trustee Levison? Present. Trustee Rosner?
Here.
Trustee Schnall?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Lerner?
Here.
Mr. Rother?
Here.
Susan Caljean, present. Meeting notice statement. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the press in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6. In addition, notice of this meeting was posted in Village Hall and on the village website and has been filed in the office of the village clerk. Official action may be taken. Susan Caljean, village clerk.
Thank you. And we have one resolution to go into executive session.
Resolution 243, resolution authorizing an executive session at the September 8th, 2014 meeting of the Board of Trustees.
The matters to be discussed in executive session tonight are Orange Lawn, which is an attorney-client privilege matter, volunteer appointments, which is a personnel matter, and PBA, police union, which is a contract negotiation. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Moved by Trustee Collum, seconded by Trustee Levison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Thank you. We'll be back here at 8 o'clock.
It's like being at home with my wife, you know? Yeah, it's like being at home with my wife.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Board of Trustees back to order. 8:06 p.m. Could we have the roll, please?
Village President Torpy?
Here.
Trustee Clark?
Here.
Trustee Column?
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Here.
Trustee Levison?
Present.
Trustee Rosner?
Here.
Trustee Schnall?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Lerner?
Here.
Mr. Rother?
Here.
Susan Caljean, present.
Thank you. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stay standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, before we get started, a couple of announcements. The first is on Monday, September 15th. That is 1 week from tonight, in this very same room, at this very same time at 7:30 p.m. We will have a community meeting on water, East Orange Water Commission, and water-related issues. There's going to be a presentation section of the meeting, and there's also going to be a chance for Q&A, and make sure that if anybody does have any questions about East Orange Water Commission, our water system, the options that we have going into the future, that we can get everybody's questions answered. We also have, or will very shortly have, all that information posted on the website. I don't know if that's up there yet, or
but if not
tonight or tomorrow morning. That'll be right on the homepage of the website. That'll include a general FAQ that has some kind of most frequently asked questions, and as well as a little bit of history, as well as some links to some more information and some videos of these kinds of meetings that we've had in the past. So please take a look at all that information, and if you are interested, again, a week from tonight, right here, we will, at 7:30, we will have a meeting about that. Play Day South Orange. The greatest day of play is on its way. Sunday, September 21st, from 1 to 6 p.m., and it's on South Orange Avenue. Soccer, inflatables, chalk art, all sorts of stuff. If you are in the mood to play, please come out and do so. And we've got Bob Zuckerberg, who's going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Just another reminder, the Community Coalition on Race is looking for potential candidates to serve as trustees for a term starting in January. If you want to learn a little bit more about them and what that role entails, you can visit twotowns.org, and the deadline for submitting that is Wednesday. The next Container Day, September 27th, from 8 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. On that Saturday down at the DPW yard at 300 Walton Ave. Make sure you bring down 2 forms of ID. It's for residents only, and no commercial vehicles are allowed. Essex County Hazardous Waste Collection is Saturday, October 4th from 8:30 to 4 p.m., and that's at 125 Fairview Ave in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. Essex County is also hosting a Computer and Electronics Recycling Day. Everybody's probably got a whole bunch of old cell phones, computers, printers, things like that at home. It is important to dispose of all of those properly, so you can come down to the same location at 125 Fairview Ave in Cedar Grove on Saturday, October 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and dispose of everything there properly. Just another reminder, the farmers market will be open until October, and that's every Wednesday from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. In the parking lot off of First Street in Sloane Street. We've had some great new vendors this summer. It's going really well, so if you haven't had the chance to stop by and check it out, please do. So we have a couple presentations this evening. The first is from the South Orange Historic Preservation Commission.
Good evening, trustees, village president. My name is Elise Carter. I live at 264 Walton Avenue. I've been a resident of South Orange for 20 years. I'm also a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, and a number of the commissioners are also here with me tonight. I know that you received in your packet a letter that we addressed to the Board of Trustees and the village president discussing the preservation of Village Hall. I hope that you have all had a few minutes to read over the letter that we have written. We've spent quite a bit of time discussing the issue of the potential sale of Village Hall, and we're very concerned about that. And I would also like to just read a few points, because it's a long letter, I understand. Just a few points that I'd like to reiterate on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission that pertain to preserving Village Hall. Dear Village President and Trustees, the Historic Preservation Commission would like to emphasize the importance of preserving South Orange Village Hall as a building owned and run by South Orange Village. We realize there are challenges in the renovation of this building, but the long-term value of saving this historic building goes way beyond the cost of its renovation. Village Hall is the heart of the village. It is our iconic architectural structure, and its function as the municipal center of the village is of utmost importance. It reminds us every day about the history of this town, of families settling here and raising their families here for many generations. We all chose to live in South Orange for a lot of reasons, but we were all drawn here by the beauty and charm of this community, where the downtown was alive and well and vibrant, where the village maintained its cultural and historic character, and where many buildings have been repurposed for the 21st century. Historic properties connect us to our past, and they enrich us all. And then there is the workmanship of this building. The research is very clear about the importance of historic preservation. In the letter that we have submitted to you on behalf of the Commission, there are a number of quotes from different sources and research that's been done over the years about the value back to the community when historic preservation is undertaken. So I'm not going to read the quotes here, but you can review them later. But South Orange is one of only a few New Jersey towns to retain gaslight illumination, and together with the distinctive Village Hall, has long been the symbol of South Orange. And that's actually from the Wikipedia entry about the village of South Orange. The recognition of the importance of this building is also included in our own vision plan. And I'll quote, "Notable downtown buildings from earlier historic periods are Village Hall, the fire station, and the train station. While the fire station and Village Hall buildings may not be assumed as models for improvements in downtown buildings and properties, the high-quality design and construction of these buildings could be used as the measuring standard for all new construction." The U.S. Congress crafted a series of reasons for saving and preserving historic properties by way of the National Historic Preservation Act, and we have included some of those points in our letter. We believe that Village Hall is not beyond restoration. This building is not only the icon of South Orange, it also represents village government and our village history. Is it more fiscally responsible to sell this historic building when South Orange has already spent money on architectural plans, architects' fees, community charrettes to review the plans, asbestos abatement, and installing a geothermal heating and cooling system? Let us be true to our own values and vision. What is a better symbol of our commitment to preserving the character of this town than keeping this building as our own? We urge you to reconsider the possibility of putting this building on the market for development. The positive economic impact on South Orange associated with rehabilitating and maintaining Village Hall cannot be overlooked when considering its future. Thank you.
Patience is up.
Thank you.
Alex,
Yeah.
three of us have said we haven't received the letter,
Elise,
so.
I know that an email was sent by Kathy Cameron and said that it would be to the trustees. Has anybody received that? Yeah,
No.
I fear that did not get
Oh,
out.
it didn't get into the packet?
It did not.
Okay.
So what we'll do is after the meeting, we'll distribute it
Yeah, or
to
if you-
everybody for their.
I have.
Okay.
I have.
Has it?
I have, and Kathy has it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, if you'd like to leave one copy, then we'll make sure to also distribute electronically to everybody as well.
Thank you.
That's the long version.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions, though, for Elise on what she shared with us?
I do. Just quickly, thanks so much for coming out tonight. The last time that the Board of Trustees had discussed this, I don't know if you were in attendance.
I was.
But the board had agreed that as we get any proposals in, that the HPC was identified as a stakeholder group that we'd want involved in evaluating some of the proposals. To your request not to put it on the market, it is already on the market. The RFP
Yes.
is available, so right now we're just awaiting whatever those responses are. And I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. I understand the action asked for to keep it as municipal use, but based on our last meeting, is your commission aware that there were restrictions, that this is not a building for sale for any other use other than you can restore the outside, have an adaptive reuse proposal, but the building, the exterior will maintain as is? Is that?
Yes, and we actually discussed that as a commission too, because we investigated more into what those implications are. Did you want to address that? Okay. We did discuss that at our last HPC meeting and
Okay.
talk about the vulnerability, the potential vulnerability of selling the building and the village no longer owning that building. And there are definite risks that we have discovered with losing ownership of that building. And that's one of the reasons that we continue to emphasize. We are aware of the fact that the proposals are coming in and that, well, I don't know if any are coming in, but we know that you put the RFP out there. So,
At the last meeting, we authorized, just so you and the commissioners are aware, we authorized a contract with a third-party marketing firm that had actually worked with our central business district and our Village Center Alliance and identifying potential uses that would be beneficial to the CBD. And so that same group had submitted to become a marketing consultant to help us pursue options for Village Hall. And they were awarded that contract. I believe it was around $8,500. Since that point in time, they've met with members of our development committee to do the walkthrough of Village Hall, compile some information, create an RFP packet, and then put it out on the market. And we had agreed, in theory, that the timeline for which we were advertising would coincide with the restoration of Village Hall as our municipal offices. So at that point in time, and I'm sure the village president will be reaching out to you, the board had absolutely welcomed the participation of all these various groups that have an interest in the future of Village Hall. But just so that we're clear and we're honest with each other, it is on the market. We can't
Right.
stop that. We voted on that. We've awarded a contract. So the next step will be, once we finally know when those RFPs are due, is to get everybody together and start discussing what the full recommendation will be to the Board of Trustees moving forward.
yes, we knew that this was also in the works, but yet no award has been
Correct.
granted yet.
That's right, and that's important to note that we're not going to do anything, and I know Trustee Schnall has been in communication with you guys, but, we're not going to do anything without making sure to consult you fully. So, we're not at the point yet, it's sort of that open-ended point that Trustee Collum pointed out. So I know I definitely appreciate the letter and the thoughts and the time that you guys spent putting that together. And again, we'll make sure to work with you guys before we get to a point where we make any decisions about it.
Okay, and just to reiterate that as a commission, we all felt very strongly, and as a united group, felt very committed to this position.
And if there are questions that any trustees do have at any point, do you want them? And then you can take, okay.
Sure.
So if anybody does have questions sort of in the meantime, send them to Trustee Schnall and he'll take them to you guys.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I did just forward the letter to everyone. So you
Thanks,
should all
Matt.
have it
Okay,
in your
thank you.
Yeah, got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, in follow-up to Commissioner Carter, Amy Don, I'm also a member of the South Orange Historic Preservation Commission, and I live at 521 Center Street here in South Orange, of course, and it was very clear when you read our letter the economic benefits of maintaining Village Hall and maintaining ownership of it as a municipal building. So just in follow-up, I wanted to reiterate that. But I also had further news. The Historic Preservation Commission is sponsoring our first major event in coordination with Recreation and Cultural Affairs and with our South Orange Village Alliance. And Bob Zuckerberg will be sharing more information about all of the Play Day events, but it's really a stay and play weekend because on Saturday we have a vintage baseball game, and I wanted to invite you all to come on the 20th of September at 12 noon. We have family games from 12 to 1. And then we have a South Orange Villagers team facing off against the Flemington Nishannick, following the 1864 rules of baseball. And I think that Trustee Schnall has a nice announcement as well about a special guest.
Sure, thanks. We are really actually reaching out to the wide community of people who are interested not only in historic preservation and recreation, but baseball in general. And South Orange has a rich history of having baseball, so we know it's documented that both Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth played on Cameron Field, which is 100 years old this year. But in particular, we've tried to see if we might find some folks that had some ties to the field, and we're happy to announce that Larry Doby, who is the first American League black baseball player, actually played the same year Jackie Robinson started, and several months later, Larry Doby from the Cleveland Indians played. His granddaughter is actually going to be coming to the game and be offering some comments about her recollection of her grandfather telling about the stories of playing baseball as an African American, but also just as someone in this community with baseball so rich in this community. So we're very excited. We're still hoping even for some other folks to speak as well.
So we invite you to attend and also celebrate the 100th anniversary of Cameron Field. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you. And before I have up for the next presentation, I did fail to mention just an important announcement, which is that we've gotten some reports of leaves in the streets. We're not quite ready to collect them yet. That's going to be the end of October, third, fourth week of October. So people could not put the leaves out in the streets yet, because then if it rains, if it's windy, anything else, the leaves get all over the place, and it kind of causes a little bit more of a mess. So hopefully in the next meeting we'll have some exact dates when we are going to be starting that collection. But if people could just hold off for a little while longer, it's kind of amazing. Hard to believe it's fall already. So next I would like to welcome up Bob Zuckerman. I must have had Facebook on my mind before. Your net worth, Bob, is really incredible. And he's from the South Orange Village Center Alliance. He's going to talk to us a little bit about what they're up to in South Orange Play Day and Facebook.
Thank you, Mr. Village President. Good evening to you and to the trustees and to everyone here tonight. I usually get Bob Zimmerman instead of Bob Zuckerman, which is Bob Dylan's real name. So, you know, but I'm not going to be singing. I'm not going to be singing tonight, so don't expect any of that. Yeah, so I wanted to just come up here tonight to talk a little bit about not just Play Day, but actually the entire weekend of September 20th and 21st, which we are calling Play and Stay Weekend, because there's so many great events going on over the course of those 2 days here in South Orange, starting with the Newstead 5K Saturday morning, then this great baseball game that we've been pleased to participate in Saturday afternoon. It's not the Eagles concert. The Eagles aren't coming here, but Eagle Mania is coming here to SoPac Saturday night. Then we have Sunday, we have Newcomers Day at the library starting at 1, and then the Insight architectural exhibit that the Piero Gallery is sponsoring. They're having an opening on over at the Duck Pond Sunday at 3, but then all afternoon on Sunday, September 21st, will be Play Day. And a lot of people have asked if Play Day is actually sort of the successor to, I think you had a street fair last year, and I think it would be fair to say that from what I've heard, it's more of a successor to Celebrate South Orange, to that kind of event that you've had here in the past, with a couple of main differences. One is that we are actually closing South Orange Avenue and some of the side streets, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a sec. So we want to prepare everybody for that major street closure, which I understand you did have last year. But also the fact that it's a different kind of event. It's all about fun. It's all about playing with games, sports, table games, art, music, and it's all got a local flair to it. So, for example, we're going to have food for sale at the event, but it's all from our local South Orange restaurants, both those that are in the Central Business District as well as a couple from Irvington Avenue. And the whole event is free, with one exception, that we will be selling wristbands for $10, which are good for the entire day, and that's to be used for the inflatables for the kids, as well as the miniature golf that we're doing, and the radio-controlled cars that we have coming, which are going to be pretty cool, pretty awesome. And we have a stage that's going to be set up on South Orange Avenue by Valley Street, and we have Mark Murphy performers from Mark Murphy Music and dancers from Maria Priaca Dance School, again, keeping with the local theme. The one exception to local is that we're bringing in someone who I worked with at an event in the Lower East Side. His name is DJ Kai, and he's from Brooklyn, and he's 9 years old. And he is a 9-year-old DJ. And he's going to be...
Him and Alex will get along great.
And he's going to be the next village president for a day.
I'm going to run for office
He's
in
going to be
South
DJ for a
Orange.
day. And
Kids and adults are going to eat this kid up. He's amazing. So we're really, really looking forward to it. Of course, the sun's going to be shining, so we're going to have a great day. But just in case it rains, we do have a rain date for the following Sunday, September 28th. But we're not counting on that. We're counting on the 21st. And then I just wanted to let everybody know that we just created a map, which we're going to put on the village website as well as our website, that shows the street closures, South Orange Avenue, Sloane Street, Village Plaza, just for the day, and a little piece of O's Avenue. There will be a detour from, if you're coming westbound, so you can go down Valley, then across 3rd Street, and then up to Ridgewood Avenue. So people will be able to get from one side of South Orange Avenue to the other. And all the parking lots are going to be open and accessible from alternative means. And thanks to the parking authority, we will have jitneys running on a every half-hour schedule. They're normal commuter routes to actually take people downtown. So we're really looking forward to it, and we hope that all of you will not only come, but invite everybody that you know, so that we have a really, really exciting event. And we're really hoping that this will be like the new signature event for South Orange in the way that Maple Woodstock is for Maplewood. That's our goal anyway.
A question
Sure.
about the cost. Could you restate that? That's something different. There's like an entrance fee?
There's no entrance fee. The only fee is we are selling wristbands for, like I said, for $10, and that's good for the entire day for people who want to use for their kids for the inflatables and the miniature golf and the radio-controlled cars.
Okay,
Only
so
for that. The food you purchase on your own. All the other street games and activities will be completely and
it's
totally
free, and it's just the wristband for those 3 types of
That's it.
activities.
And, and Bob, can you offer the generous sponsorship that allowed so many of these things?
Thank
to be
you,
free?
Trustee Schnall. We have been very fortunate to receive approximately $20,000 so far in sponsorship money for this event, including a presenting sponsor, which is Rite Aid, which we are thrilled about partnering with them. They've just invested a lot of money in renovating their store and rebranding, and they are really making a commitment to South Orange by coming in at that level. Investors Bank, who of course sponsors so many events here in South Orange, Maple Crest Ford and Lincoln from Union is a big sponsor, and the Village Green NJ is our media sponsor.
And to add, actually, since it is the whole weekend, the Gateway Apartments is also actually sponsoring
That's
the
right.
historic baseball event. So the beauty of this is it's really free for the most part to all residents and anybody who wants to come. And thankful to the generosity of some great sponsors. And the Rite Aid one is spectacular because they had not today, I don't think, participated, and they're the lead sponsor, so it's really terrific that we're.
And they're very excited about this event. They really are.
Yeah.
They're sending people from all over the region to come to South Orange. So,
That's great.
It's great.
great.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks,
you.
everyone.
As he's walking away, I want to embarrass Bob just a little bit so I can thank you while you're here and not later on. Is that I think the board knows that since Bob has come on in our initiative with Irvington Avenue, that even though Bob's district is not Irvington Avenue, we've not seen anything but incredible support from the Village Center Alliance, picking up other business owners, even though they're not necessarily in the district. Bob was with us at the ribbon cutting. He's promoting the restaurants over there. The email blast, always try and include other things that are happening outside of the CBD. And Bob, I think it means a lot to a lot of people, what you're doing. And so keep up the great work, and thanks so much.
And not only that, even though his mom told him not to, he brought those big red scissors and was running. I saw him running in the street with those scissors. So.
I still have. Let me know when you need it.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, now on to the really fun stuff. Approval of minutes. We've got a special and conference meeting from August 11th. Can I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by Trustee Davis Ford. Seconded by Trustee Clark. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. And if we could just note for the record that Trustee Levison did have to step out. Okay, before we move on to any of our other business tonight, I'm gonna like to open the meeting up for public comments. So if there's any member of the public who wishes to comment, just come on up. Just try and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please, and just introduce yourself. There's a mic right down there. You don't have to climb the stairs. You might have to.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Bob Barnett. I'm now officially a business owner in South Orange. I used to live here, and I recently moved away, but I opened up a business on South Orange Avenue. I just wanted to reiterate, I'm speaking on behalf of, just as a business owner, my interest in preserving Village Hall. I think that the board needs to recognize the fact that sunk costs have been spent. Sunk costs, including asbestos abatement and the geothermal wells, will remain sunk costs if these are not invested. If these go to a developer, these are sunk costs, throwaway costs. If South Orange retains the building, then these are investments. I just wanted to make that statement. I also wanted to ask, has the board specifically solicited the services of paid consultants other than architects knowledgeable in government adaptive reuse? That's just a question. I think that you should consider that. Adaptive reuse is not just taking a government building and turning it into a restaurant or a hotel. It's taking a government building and reusing it for purposes of the government. So I strongly recommend you do that. And then I ask if the board is familiar with the Salem County renovation of their courthouse, which was done 2 years ago. This is the second oldest active courthouse in the United States. It was renovated 2 years ago. It had extensive asbestos abatement. They had to rebuild an entire basement. The cost of the project was $1.4 million. From the cost that I'm seeing that I'm seeing online at least, I don't understand how the costs are what they appear to be in those publications. So, and I'll just conclude by saying that, and I apologize. I understand that this is a very important thing, but it is very important to people that live here and feel strongly about the community. I'll be a little bit dramatic, but New York did not sell pieces of Central Park when it came into a downfall of financials. United States did not auction off the Statue of Liberty or put out an RFP to auction off the Statue of Liberty. The Village Hall is a very important symbol of this village. And this village has chosen to use the Village Hall in its marketing materials. It is part of our logo. So I would just like to reiterate that please please do not consider the RFPs that are out there. And I consider the RFP that is out. Trustee Collin, I believe. I understand that it has been out, but I look at that as a potential sunk cost. Just like the decision to start swinging the hammer to do the geothermal and swinging the hammer to do the asbestos abatement. To me, that can be a sunk cost, and I think it should remain a sunk cost. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak at this time?
Good evening. Mayor Alice P. Torpy, Trustees. First, I have two topics tonight to discuss. My name is Alyssa Aronson. I'm a long-time
Just a little closer to the mic.
You got to talk right into the mic.
The first question is for the New Jersey Animal Coalition. I understand that South Orange is going to sell it to Newark to make it a kill shelter. The next topic is about resolutions. 214 and 255 and 214-56. And you need to put all your executive sessions on Laserfish so that all the residents of South Orange can view it.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
Hi, Nancy Shedelick. I live in Union, New Jersey. I'm a band volunteer at JAC. I'm not sure all of my questions involve JAC, so since Adam's not here, I don't know if I should pose them or wait till he comes back.
Well, if you'd like to do it now, we can get back to you, or if you'd like to leave your information and we can do it over email, however you prefer. If you'd like to read them now, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, my first question is, when will the settlement be signed that was mentioned in the Village Green article in August? It's also said there was 120 days to start to find homes for the animals there. It didn't say when the tick-tock starts. Are there plans in place for the animals that will be abandoned by JAC when the eviction date is reached? Sending the animals to the Newark shelter is not really a good option. They need to go to rescues or sanctuaries to have a chance for a better life. Most of the animals that will be abandoned, and believe me, they'll be left there, will probably have been at JAC for several years. Their stress level is already extremely high since the closing in March. A lot of the dogs have been in cages for 24 hours without getting walked. So their stress level is over the roof. Okay, who is administering medications currently at the JAC since the vet tech quit about 3 weeks ago? Has JAC hired another vet tech? And how many times does the veterinarian of record actually come to the shelter to evaluate the animals that are there right now? I know one of them, his name is Chewbacca. They have to use a lift to get him out. His back legs don't work. So I don't know whether he's being evaluated or what. On a weekly basis, is someone from South Orange or the NJSPCA checking on the animals? Apparently last week the shelter ran out of food and all the volunteers were running around like crazy buying food for these animals. And I don't know if anybody's checking on that. Has anyone received, this is my third request, the necropsy reports on those two dead dogs, Lickety Split and Lucky? It's been almost 2 months now since they died at the shelter, and I don't understand why that information is not being made available. I took care of those dogs for 7 years. And a dog named Charles just recently passed away, another JAC animal, at the veterinarian of record, Dr. Santiago, where he has been kept for several weeks after an operation. And I was wondering if anybody knows why or how this dog died, because they aren't publishing anything on their website. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, did you get all those questions
I did.
down so we could? Okay.
I don't know if we're going to be able to answer all of them, but I do get them down.
Will will this be the only opportunity to speak, or will I get a chance to speak once the Ward Place parking matter is introduced?
Is that on?
It's for
On
first
For
reading.
first reading, so there
First
won't be
reading.
another opportunity for that until after
There
we
will-
vote on it.
Yeah, if it were to be introduced, there will be a public hearing
Right.
scheduled for a subsequent meeting at which you can speak, but this would be the only opportunity prior to that item on the agenda for you, if you wanted to address
So
that.
this is really not an appropriate time to address
No.
this?
You
No, I know.
Certainly
could
welcome any-
address the questions either now, or if it does pass tonight.
Can't do it in 3 minutes.
If it does, well, it's still going to be a 3-minute limit the next time too. And then if it does pass tonight, then it goes to second reading, and during that second reading, there's another opportunity for public comment.
But there is another suggestion. There's a public comment now, and then at the end of the meeting, there's another opportunity for public comment.
All right,
Yeah.
well, very quickly, I'm Bill Wasick. I'm a 33-year resident and homeowner at Ward and Gardner, right across from the back gate of Seton Hall. And, use that old Yogi Berra line about deja vu all over again, because we've been through this for the last 5 years discussing parking on Ward Place. And the issue was, to the best of my knowledge, resolved in February of 2011 in committee, in Planning and Zoning Committee, as chaired by Trustee Gould. And a number of us that live along Ward made our presentation in opposition to the idea of permitting parking along the east side of Ward Place, between Wilden and South Orange Avenue. The way, at the end of that meeting, and I believe a couple of the trustees here tonight were at that meeting, it was resolved that there would not be parking on that section of Ward between Wilden and South Orange Avenue. And that's the way it stood until last September, when you took action, President Torpy, on emergency parking, which made sense. But to make this permanent is, I believe, a tremendous mistake. Just in the last year, when we've had the parking, there have been 3 major accidents along there, including a fatal accident. And I think in each instance, these events were affected substantially by parking along that side of Ward Place. It's, as I've communicated with you in the past, it's not only a matter of public safety. Trash has increased greatly in the last year. There is, I don't know if there has indeed been an increase in street crime along there, but there's a greater potential for it with parking, a lot of parking at night, even though it's illegal. Signs have been posted for no parking during, well, all through this whole past year, and yet parking has been allowed. Even during the summer, noise, a lot more noise. And it's dangerous for everybody along there. It's more difficult to back your car out into Ward Place. It's difficult to cut that part of the lawn in the median. You've got lots of pedestrians, including mothers with children taking their children to Marshall School. To sum things up, this all began as a result of the Belgian block curbing being put in 2009, which we were very happy to see in the repaving of Ward Place.
Thank you.
You're welcome to come back at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to ask people to all stick to the same time limit. I hate doing it, but we do have a public comment period at the end of the meeting. I would also ask that if you leave your information, or if you can send me and I can send to the rest of you, if there's any materials, anything like that too. So that would be helpful. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Okay, I'd like to close public comments and see if we can address some of the questions and concerns that came up. The first were about adaptive reuse of Village Hall, that's definitely something that we have talked about, and there are kind of a couple of very sort of preliminary ideas potentially out there. If you do have any expertise, information on that, I mean, feel free to send it. You know, definitely open to it. I know I'm going to look into the Salem County Courthouse. You know, these things are not always apples to apples, but who knows what we could, you know, learn from that. So, you know, feel free to send any of that kind of stuff over. I think part of the overall idea with putting the RFP out there and doing all of this was that we're basically kind of interested in, hey, if anybody's got ideas about what to do, you know, we want to hear it. It's not just, you know, hey, here's a building and we want to sell it. That's one of the potential options that we basically want to put everything on the table for the most part and just see what we get back and then kind of look at what all of our options are. So if you do have any ideas like that, I mean, feel free to send it to all of us, to me, I'll forward it to everybody or, you know, however you like. But that's definitely helpful. So thank you. We'll make sure that approved executive session minutes that are for public release do go in Laserfiche. Every document that we do make public, all of our governing body records should be in there. Minutes, resolutions, agendas, ordinances, everything should be there. So anything that is public should be in there. So we'll make sure to take care of that as soon as we can. The JIC questions, I don't know if you guys, I did get all the questions down. I certainly don't know all the answers. I don't know if either you, Mr. Lewis, or Mr. Rother could speak to it. Mr. Lerner's not back. Or maybe we can just kind of put the questions down and...
Yeah, I think that there are certainly some that I'll sort of generally, based on my recollection, but as far as going down the whole list, we'll get those, and we're happy to provide you a response. And I assume Adam has your information. In a nutshell, we are waiting. We have currently filed a motion seeking to enforce a settlement agreement that was agreed to in principle and signed by JAC's counsel because we have been waiting for the JAC to execute the agreement. As far as what may happen, assuming that settlement plays itself out and they vacate, we are certainly making contingency plans in every respect with the best interest of the animals to do whatever we can to the greatest extent possible if they do abandon, leave animals there, to make sure that they have an opportunity to get adopted or go to shelters. And Adam's working closely, I know, with organizations. We have recently become aware of what we understand to be a third animal that was recently deceased. We do not have, and nor are we currently in a position to obtain or compel necropsy reports on any of them. We don't know if that's occurred. Our ability, because it's in a litigation status, we have limited ability to get in there on a regular basis. We share all your concerns about the interest of the animals and what's going on there. We recently did hear about the food situation, which obviously concerns us as well. We're certainly keeping the SPCA involved and up to speed, and to the extent we can confirm and the situation worsens and it does not appear the settlement's going to get effectuated, then we will certainly take every appropriate action within our power, utilizing the court, SPCA, and whomever else to do everything we can to protect the animals. And beyond that, the specific questions, we're happy to answer them. And I think the village president took them down there, obviously, on tape anyway. So I will review those with Adam and ensure if there are any specific ones that I missed that we'll get back to you.
Thank you. And I don't know if the gentleman is still here from Ward. So we'll go back maybe with a little more information. But one of the things that we did make sure to address in looking at even the ordinance that's on for tonight was removing some of the parking away from the gates. So where there is traffic that's coming in and out, the way it had been painted was the lines basically went right up to the side. So it was sometimes a little difficult if cars were parked up, right to the edge to see past it. There's a couple areas in town where that exists actually still. But anyway, we did, and we actually already went out and had that repainted with yellow paint to make sure people understand that there's absolutely no parking there no matter what, so people have much better distance when they're pulling out of any of the gates. So we did recognize that as something that needed to be changed no matter what we did. But anyway, that ordinance is on. Hopefully we can watch the discussion and can talk more next week. So I think that was everything. Let's move on to our ordinances for second reading.
2014-16, second reading and public hearing of an ordinance that repeals and amends certain sections of ordinance number 2012-09 to allow for non-residents of South Orange to serve as members for certain classes of membership of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you. This ordinance does exactly what the title says it does, and we had discussed it before. But basically, for the classes of membership where there is a reliance on someone's professional or business expertise, whether or not they are residents, not necessarily as relevant to that. So that was the change here, to allow that professional expertise to be part of the HPC, which I think we're all excited about. So anyway, what I'd like to do, seeing as this is the second reading of this ordinance, I'd like to open it up for public comment. So if there's any member of the public who wishes to make a comment specifically on this ordinance, you can come forward and do so now. Seeing as there are no members of the public who wish to comment, I'd like to close the public hearing, and unless there's any further questions or comments from the board, I would ask for a motion.
I'll move.
Moved by Trustee Davis-Ford.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Schnall. Can we have the roll call, please?
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Column?
Yes.
Trustee Davis-Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Levinson is absent. Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 2014-17, second reading and public hearing of a bond ordinance will be carried to the September 22nd, 2014 Board of Trustees meeting.
Do we need an ordinance to carry this to the meeting, or do we just need a motion?
No, just a motion. And did we originally set the public hearing? I don't think it was, I think it was originally set for the 22nd. This is
Weren't you waiting for the Finance Board to...
Pardon me?
Was the Finance Board supposed to be hearing something?
Yeah,
before we could-
this, you may recall, is an ordinance which we introduced. It's actually our proportional share of a joint meeting obligation for sewer improvements. The joint meeting has an application pending before local finance board, and so we cannot take action. And I believe that we originally scheduled, I think, the public hearing on this for September 22nd, but just to cover our bases in case we did not, I think a motion would be sufficient to reschedule this or carry it to the 22nd. The local public finance board is scheduled to hear the joint meeting application on September 12th. Assuming that is acted upon favorably, then we'd be in a position to have the public hearing and adopt the ordinance on the 22nd. Obviously, if for some unforeseen reason that local finance board hearing gets postponed, we'll have to postpone this again because we cannot adopt it until after they approve it.
So can I ask for just a motion to put on for second reading and set as a public hearing 2014-17 for September 22nd? Is that fine?
The standard statement that Trustee Davis-Ford makes for
Right. Which, when we did this originally,
Yes, we did. We originally put it on for the 22nd.
That's what I believe.
That was my
I don't
recollection
think
as well.
anything's necessary,
So,
but-
So I don't think we need to do anything.
No, it's already been done.
Okay.
Great.
So let's move on.
Ordinances for first reading, 2014-18, introduction and first reading of an ordinance to amend the pay-to-play ordinance.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion, could I just get Mr. Lewis, maybe, or Mr. Rother, could you give just a brief, sort of 2-minute introduction to this?
Yeah, no, I will attempt to be brief, and there are a couple different moving parts, but in a nutshell, the state of New Jersey initially enacted some what's called pay-to-play legislation with the intention of curbing sort of political contributions and what had become unfortunately too common of you make donations, you get contracts. The state enacted its ordinance, which not only established certain thresholds for contributions, but also established two different processes, one called non-fair and open and one called fair and open. The state, under the state statute, any professional service contract in excess of $17,500 either has to be awarded through what's called a fair and open process, in which there are criteria, and it's similar to a public bidding scenario, or alternatively, you could award it on a non-fair and open process where you simply awarded it to the particular professional that the municipality was most comfortable with. In that latter instance, then, there was a prohibition of anyone who obtained such a contract from making what is called a reportable contribution to any of the elected officials, campaigns, or committees supporting that local municipality, and a reportable contribution anything over $300. A number of years ago, the village saw fit to, and as authorized by the state statute, enact local legislation that strengthened those requirements and adopted a pay-to-play ordinance, which initially it banned any contribution for a professional service contract, regardless of the amount and regardless of whether it was done fair and open or non-fair and open. It also required a fair and open process for any professional service contract. And then subsequently, that was amended to require fair and open for professional service contracts over $17,500 and not require it, but have a quote process for ones below that. In practice, as it was implemented, I think, and as evidenced by a couple different amendments to it, the strict application of it presented certain difficulties, both operationally and quite frankly, in terms of the village's ability to get the best value, and certainly I think those were unintended consequences. So in my time here, kind of becoming aware of those issues, having talked to department heads who have encountered some of those issues, it became apparent that I think the ordinance needed some additional amendment. And so what we have proposed is it's presented as a replacement because it's easier than just identifying all the changes. But it is what I believe strikes the appropriate compromise of retaining the salutary purposes of the ordinance while addressing some of those practical difficulties. So, in a nutshell, and just to summarize as proposed, this ordinance. And I would point out that the version that was originally circulated and on the website, based in response to, I think, some public comment, public feedback, some review and questions raised by board members, has been tweaked slightly. And the final sort of version, which has been reviewed with the board and presented to the board earlier this evening, and which is now on the website, corrects a couple things. So the version that is on the website that is before the board for potential introduction tonight does a couple of things. One, it retains the no reportable contribution for any professional service contract or extraordinary unspecified service contract, regardless of the amount. So any amount, no reportable contributions, whether fair and open, non-fair and open. It provides and requires and continues to require that any professional service or extraordinary unspecified services contract in excess of $17,500 is required to be procured through the fair and open process in accordance with the state statute. So it retains that provision. And to clarify, what it does is make two exceptions, one of which is what is identified and defined now as appointed professional services. And in a nutshell, that is for our professionals who serve the village on an annual basis, and there are professional service contracts, village council, bond council, redevelopment council, COA council, the village planner, the planning board council, planning board planner, board of adjustment council planner, HPC council. Under the state local public contracts law, those contracts are limited to terms of 12 months. It is simply not practical or realistic to think that you're going to go out an RFP and potentially switch every one of those positions every 12 months. It wouldn't serve the village's interest. It wouldn't be efficient. And that is not to say, though, even as proposed, the village retains the right to go out on any of those positions every year whenever it feels the need to do so, whether based on performance, concern about billings, or any other reason. But so the balance that and I would note that even from the adoption of this ordinance, in looking back at the history, I think even the initial authors and enactors of this ordinance, I think relatively quickly realized that is not a practical practice to do that on a yearly basis, because it has never been done since we did it. It seemed to be, and I think subsequently it's my understanding that the board, in recognition of that, decided to go with a policy of doing it every 3 years. So what this amended ordinance does is it follows that same lead. It recognizes that it's not practical, so it exempts the appointed professional services from being done every year, but does nevertheless require that to be done at a minimum every 3 years, again reserving the right to the board to do it more frequently or on any occasion that the situation would seem to dictate that. So I think that strikes the appropriate balance of ensuring that we, at least periodically every 3 years, essentially just go see what's out there, kind of check the market for rates, recap and assess the performance of the current professionals, and essentially just make sure that we're engaging in a deliberative process that serves the interest while not making it such a short period of time as to not be realistic. The other exception, which is one that was to a large degree, I think at least the purpose of it was attempted to be addressed in a 2011 amendment, and which is expanded upon here in some respects and quite frankly tightened up here in other respects, is what we've identified as additional professional services or additional services. And this is a situation we have found ourselves in where we go out, we do an RFP, we have a fair and open process, we award a contract to a professional to do what I'll call the preliminary or background work on a particular project, i.e. an assessment where they go in, they do all the measurements, they assess the condition, hypothetically say of a building, and then because at that point you don't know what the condition is or what the potential scope of work of a project would be, it's not possible at that time to get a quote and award a contract for the design and specification and bidding documents. But then when you complete that assessment, you're at a point where, and or because a project sort of grows in scope, there's two different scenarios this could occur, where you have a professional who's done all the background work, and in some instances has already done all the design work, but either there's some additional work that is now discovered or contemplated, or because this is sort of phase two, so you want to do the design and specifications for the project, where if you went out to RFP, any subsequent company that you would hire would have to redo all the work or a significant portion of the work of the original firm. This provides an exception for that and recognizes that nobody would do that in their own life. And I think again strikes the appropriate balance. Also, what we've done is to include in here, which was not previously included, a requirement that any additional services be provided under the same rates, terms, and conditions as the initial contract to the greatest extent possible. And I think that's an additional protection in the sense that they've committed to certain hourly rates. They're not able on phase two to figure they got you over the barrel, so now we're going to jack the rates up. So I think it strikes that balance. And then finally, I would note that as with the case of appointed professionals, this exception is also subject to the board can nevertheless, if because of, say, the underlying scope was a certain amount, and all of a sudden it looks like the second phase will be significantly more or higher, or that maybe it's not as integrally tied to the first one. The board always has the discretion, as does, and certainly I would hope that if we're faced with that situation, I'd be the one recommending it, is that we go out and nevertheless RFP it, even though technically it's exempt, we can always not follow our own exemption. So that is the gist of the amendments. Again, I think based on my own experience with it, conversation with department heads, and certainly some of the trustees in various committees have encountered this firsthand. I think it strikes the right purpose, continues to, ban any contributions. It requires fair and open where the state would otherwise not require it, and it requires that even under the exemptions that we do go out and check on our appointed professionals every 3 years, which again, we're not required to do, and I can assure you that the overwhelming majority of towns do not do. And then finally, even on the additional services, it does rein them in, which again, none of these are required by the state law. So it certainly, I think, addresses all the intent and the protections, which I know South Orange is proud to be a leader in the pay-to-play arena and fair and open and transparency. So I think this strikes the right balance. That's in a nutshell. Again, the final version is now on the website for anyone who wants to see it. But other than that, unless anyone had questions. And that probably wasn't as brief as
Thank
you.
you. No, see, you went to the trustee column school of brevity. But seriously, thank you for the thorough explanation. That is very helpful. And if there are any questions? Or,
No, I just thought it was just to restate that this current version is online right now.
Currently.
Okay.
I move the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, moved by trustee Collins, seconded by trustee Schnall. Can we have the roll call, please?
Trustee Column?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Levinson?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the hardest part of this job is choosing between the smiling faces with who made the first motion.
Gotta smile big.
Or the loudest voice.
That's true.
You always win that. We need Jeopardy-type buzzers.
That's right.
That's true. I'd love that. That'd be great. All right,
Okay.
moving on.
Ordinance 2014-19, introduction and first reading of an ordinance to amend the code of the Township of South Orange Village, Section 152-11.3, with respect to parking on Ward Place.
Thank you. So this was a little bit of what came up earlier. We had discussed in the past, this is about parking on the east side of Ward Place. We are, I think, all sort of under the impression that it had been discussed a couple different times here previously. Like the gentleman before mentioned, we made a sort of an emergency order last year to assist Seton Hall with the overflow parking, which was very helpful for them. They have a pretty good setup now with their garage as far as their parking needs, but they still are interested in that space. There is a revenue impact for us. I know Mark Hart with Parking Authority was here. But they have the same relationship. This contemplates being the same relationship that the parking spaces on South Orange Ave have, where they are for Seton Hall, but the Parking Authority basically leases them out to Seton Hall, who issues permits to students. So that's how this is contemplated for that. The gentleman before also mentioned some of the safety concerns about visibility on the street, which we did change by taking away about 50 feet on either side of any entranceway onto Ward Place where the parking would be, so that people have a much clearer, longer view down the road. So that's that. I don't know if there are questions or comments on it.
My comment is when we first looked at redoing Ward Place, part of the thing is we actually widened that part of the road to allow parking, but we talked about 2-hour parking for anybody, not exclusive for anybody. And I still think that if we open up the parking again, that it shouldn't be exclusive for students, and I think we should keep the parking more consistent. And we did talk about, back then, and I think it was '09, but we talked about students who might have one class or two classes, could go there for the 2-hour parking, and that would cover it, and then have to deal with the garage or whatever, and then there was, of course, a big shortage. You're talking more about all-day parking, I think, with the permit, and I just don't know why we should make it exclusive to them. There were some residents on Ward who were in favor of parking, and specifically, so when people wanted to come visit them for lunch or whatever it was, that they could have some parking available there. And, so I would still think that would be a reasonable solution, allowing the parking to be consistent with the neighborhood and to allow that stretch of parking for that. I would not favor all-day parking there, just exclusively for Seton Hall students.
One thing that we had talked about, and maybe there's some sort of flexibility here with how we put this together, but was that after the permitted hours, this was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., is that, basically before and after that, when you are allowed to park on the streets, that would be just 2-hour parking for anybody. That doesn't necessarily address during the daytime, but that thought was there, so, I don't know, I'm sort of interested in what other people think if we want to make it 2-hour parking, or the only thing with that is that a 2-hour parking doesn't really help, provide anything for the university at all at that point, because, 2 hours is not, it's not even one class, especially not one of my classes, and so, I guess I would suggest that if people are interested in going down that road, to maybe make it 4-hour parking or something instead. I don't think we're going to see people parking there for, commuting or anything like that. But then that would allow a student to go there, park there, run into class, come back out, something like that. Also, the parking authority would lose out on the revenue from that, but I don't know if that's important or not.
Two questions.
4 hours sounds like a fair compromise between that so a student who's commuting in for a morning class or an afternoon class could take advantage of that without wiping out a whole.
And it would also allow visitors to people on Ward park there. Yeah.
That's a reasonable.
I'm not really sure if the new parking deck is complete. Why is that parking on Ward Place then necessary for the university? I thought part of the idea behind the parking deck was that they were accommodating all the parking needs.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't think that they would, and I don't want to put words in Seton Hall's mouth, but I don't think that they would say this is, an absolute necessity and they can't function without it the way it was last year. definitely not there. Definitely provides a much higher level of convenience. I would imagine for people that are maybe running late to something or whatever, parking on the street is easier than going up to the top of the parking garage. The idea of having a few spaces around the outside of campus that people could use so they don't clog up as much going through campus. But like you said, it's not, they haven't come to us and said, we don't have any parking, we need this to be able to accommodate, we need X number of spaces to accommodate X number of cars, which is what happened the last time around.
It also helps.
So it's less urgent than that.
Did this come through one of our committees or something then?
This kind of got rolled over, because I think what actually ended up happening was my temporary order got sort of extended indefinitely, or we forgot to unorder it. And people were indeed parking there over the summer. So I just think we never really dealt with it, and when Mr. Lewis and I had spoken about it, it was like, okay, well, why don't we actually just formally make the decision one way or the other, so I don't have to keep doing these temporary things. If we want parking there, let's decide if it's 2 hours, 4 hours, student permits, whatever, or not, then not, but sort of put it to rest.
Hi. Okay,
Hi.
so I'm sad to see Mr. Wasik, I believe is pronounced, leave, because I could have given his perspective. So travel back. I'll try not to be too long. The whole thing about Ward parking came about because of the issue, the crisis on campus. So after that happened and we tried to remove the parks from Tuxedo Park and find alternative areas, I think the Ward Place residents were very kind of accommodating to understanding the predicament that we were in, and they were pretty good neighbors. But when you travel even further back, and once I saw this ordinance, I reached out to people who were in my email inbox who have discussed Ward before to see, like, did you know about this? Do you have any idea? Would you support it? For the most part, what I found was that people were pretty content, and they allowed us, they indulged us in a year of Seton Hall getting their parking deck up. And to Walter's point, I think that was the purpose, get the deck up, and hopefully we can alleviate some of the need for student or faculty parking on the side streets. I'm okay with South Orange Avenue. I think that's less quote-unquote residential, but the Ward Place residents, I think, put the time, the effort, et cetera, in lobbying the board prior to this board right now, coming forward with what they preferred for that street. And so if there's not a bare necessity for Seton Hall, if we're no longer in a state of emergency, I would rather see what was in place before the executive order remain there for the residents.
So what was in place before was just no parking?
No parking.
Okay.
And when I ask the residents what they do about that, I would never want no parking on my own block because friends, people who are visiting, et cetera.
Sure.
They say they share each other. I do have friends. They share each other's driveways or they go down the street and they park, but they've overall been pretty content with not having the parking there. To Mr. Wasik's point also about the accidents that have occurred, I went back to what those accidents were. I don't think they were related to the parking in the least bit. In fact, the police department looked into that. So, of course, there's the quality of life issue, which I think I'm trying to address by saying I'd rather not see this ordinance. But in terms of the public safety issue, I don't think the accidents that occurred there were directly related to the parking that was occurring from the overcrowding on campus.
No, with all of the different changes that we talked about on Ward Place, I just want to make sure we avoid some of the decisions we made about parking in other areas, that we had one contingent that wanted no parking or limited parking, and then once we followed through with that, we had another group that said, we don't want that. So I want us to make sure that whatever decision we make, most of the residents are on the same page. So, it might be the compromise for our parking. I personally would be against all-day parking. With the new garage there, I don't see any need. I would have no problem with there being no parking there if that was fine with most of the residents. But maybe some of the residents would like parking for their guests. So I just want us to be sure that we have the buy-in of most of the residents on what is decided there, so we don't have all this back and forth.
I agree. What I'm proposing basically takes this neighborhood back to where they were before we had the parking crisis on campus.
Well, doesn't the executive order expire in 45 days?
It was supposed to, but it's continued indefinitely.
But it should have expired.
Yeah, but, so?
So we're back to where we were.
Well, no, but we should make a decision.
Oh, I agree with that, but right now, it's where, or
You know-
it should be where it was.
Well, right now, they're allowed to park there because I redid the order. But that's going to expire soon.
One of the things is when Ward was redone, and you just drive out there, it was redone and improved and paved at a width that is greater than a street that you would pave it, and some monies were invested clearly with the intention of making that a parking lane. There's now obviously in hindsight, having done it, anybody, you can change your mind, decide not to have the parking there, but I think that's a question. It does appear, and we looked into the history of this, at some point there was an ordinance then passed to permit it, and it was actually introduced, it was adopted, and then that was, if you may recall, this weird procedural thing where then they voted not to publish it, and it sort of like went into limbo or died from that point. The only other point I would point out is that the permit parking zone B is not limited solely to Seton Hall. It is Seton Hall and properties in the vicinity, and there's some criteria in the ordinance. So residents across the street could get permits to use that parking. Businesses in that immediate vicinity could get parking. So I did want to just clarify, it's not a, quote, Seton Hall only permit parking. So those are the only 2 points that I have. And yeah, certainly it did appear that in 2011, when it was on the verge of being implemented and then stopped, it was based on a certain amount of public participation opposing it.
There was a series of meetings, and Trustee Rosner, you could probably speak to this.
Yeah, when I remember back, the most vocal people were against the parking, but there were several people in favor, and several people just didn't care one way or the other. But I think most of the anti-parking sentiment was also anti-students parking on there because of the in and out and parking there all day for classes and the noise factor in the evening/nighttime. And that seemed to be the biggest issue, and the parking closest to the gate, which was addressed already by expanding the how far it is for visibility and so forth. We could go back and do a meeting with all the residents on Ward and have this come up. But the last time there were a couple residents, I can't remember the street that intersects over there. But they mostly also objected to it for some reason, which I don't really remember. We have to go back to the minutes, I guess. But it just didn't seem to me that it was clear-cut majority one way or the other on whether we had it. And I know we specifically, when we did that, when we repaved it, we did widen that stretch there by 4 feet to make it allow it for parking. And that was the original intent, was to allow parking there.
And that's why, based on what you just stated right now, is another reason to go back and have a conversation or a survey. And then we're not going to get 100%, but at least have the majority of the people in agreement about what should happen there and make our decision based on that.
But to my earlier point, I don't know what problem we're solving. There was rules put in place. I, as Public Safety Committee Chair, up until the issue with Seton Hall, had never heard anybody reach out and say, we got to change this. I don't know if other board members heard that request from residents after the no parking was put into place. They then accommodated us to allow for the parking on Ward. And then I think the expectation from the residents was once the parking deck was up, then we would go back to business as usual. So, I mean, if we did a poll with like every street in South Orange, what do you want to do with parking? I mean, we could talk about it all day. I'm just using that as an extreme example. So why like
I don't disagree that the decision is ours, but I just don't think it was clear cut one way or the other that it was everybody who was on that street was against parking. There was some expectation of some people that there was going to be parking allowed, and the board at that time voted against it because the most vocal were adamant about it, and the people who were a bit in favor of it just didn't want to go fight against them, and they said, okay, we'll continue with the same system we have. Well, I don't think it's, I understand the 4-hour thing, but I don't think it's terrible to allow some parking on that stretch. We have a shortage of parking in town.
I was going to ask, and so besides just the residents, so wouldn't that be an opportunity for visitors to the campus, rather than having to go through the main gate, and in fact, if they're adding security and making that a potentially paid entry, wouldn't that be an alternative to actually allow, if I wanted to go on campus to attend a lecture or see a show?
And be cheaper, too.
That's what I'm
Because if
saying.
it was, if the board wanted to make it available for parking, now that they're charging guests to come on campus.
Exactly.
We'll see more activity over there.
Yes, they will be
are
doing
now.
it. So, I mean, it becomes a good alternative for not just the residents. That's why I was concerned in not just putting a survey of people who lived on the street. It's a townwide thing. And I think it is up to us to decide the functional uses of that. And it seems to me there's an advantage to, especially if it's not, A, if it's not a public safety issue, and B, it's wide enough to support it.
Yeah, I mean, it's wide enough because it's all painted. I mean, it's painted in a way to support parking, already.
I'd like to see it considered.
I'd like to see and another thing, with the partnership that we had with Maplewood and Newark and talking about the various bike paths, if you recall when we did the walkthrough about access points from the university to Irvington Avenue and then creating a bike path to New Jersey Transit, that was the corridor that we walked along as a potential to get people there without using vehicles. And so in an ideal situation, based on what I know at this time, is I would like the executive order to expire, take no action on this ordinance, take action if we hear something future somewhere down the line, but consider that as where that additional space is, because there's not anything on the west side where you could put a bike path, it would have to be on that side, is that as we move forward with seeing if we can get the grant money, et cetera, that be the bike lane to get to Irvington Avenue.
Yeah, so, I mean, it sounds like what it's doing is worth exploring and looking at these different options and seeing if that outweighs that, or, if there are any other, because I thought there was also space on the west side of Ward as well, that it just wasn't marked for parking, but I could be wrong.
There's no parking on, there's not the space for it.
So, I mean, it sounds like a formal review, and maybe that's parking and zoning. Parking and zoning, you got a new.
All right, there we go.
I would agree with that. I feel like each of us is sort of confused on what the point of this is, and that if there are possibilities to be considered, we should consider them, and frankly, maybe the Transportation Committee should be considering them and making a more educated recommendation, rather than something that kind of popped up as a result of the executive order expiring.
Yeah, right. So it sounds like the more comprehensive review is worth doing, making sure to touch base with the Transportation Advisory, anybody else, especially if there's any questions about what's going on with Irvington Ave as well.
When does it expire? Who rides bikes anyway?
I'm not sure, I can check. And I can check with Seton Hall and see if they kind of need it still, and if people are kind of okay with me doing that again, or to just let it expire.
I think at this point, until a decision is made, the Seton Hall needs to be reminded when the expiration is, because the one thing that I spoke about with the administrator is that we did get a concern from a resident about what's the enforcement over there, because the signs are still up as no parking.
Right. Well, that's a problem. Yeah, right.
And so, you have to explain that, there was an executive order, the signs are up, that's fine, but before we start issuing summonses or warnings or anything like that, the university needs to be responsible for sending out a campus-wide reminder to folks that that was a courtesy from the village, and now prior measures are now in full effect. Until the time that if we do Seton Hall student permits or faculty or open it up, et cetera, that's a different case. But at this point, once it expires, their deck now has its COO. Their vehicle should be on campus, and business should be used as usual on Workplace.
So you guys, in the near term, are not particularly favorable towards extending the privileges on Ward when it expires?
No, my understanding was once they had their deck built, they didn't really need this.
Yeah.
Well, but now it's just, now I feel bad because it's kind of our fault for not addressing it in a clear way, because we've been kind of allowing it, but there are no parking signs.
So address it in a clear way, that's all. Tell them the deadline is whatever date, and that after that, the enforcement.
Well, that's right, that's what I'm asking, is kind of what people's favorability is.
That's all I would do, yeah.
And then for the first, after they send out a campus-wide whatever, for our parking authority to know to issue warnings for the first couple of weeks, so anybody who didn't read the email, et cetera. And then, if Transportation Advisory or Planning and Zoning wants to talk about Ward Place parking in the future, that's fine. But the immediate time being, that's what I think, I'm not taking it in public safety. For the immediate time being, I think that's the most appropriate now that they have their deck up.
Okay.
So we still should find out when it expires.
Yeah, I will. Okay. So what I am assuming is that there is not a motion to pass this ordinance. Do we have a motion?
To table?
To table.
Yeah.
I move to table.
Second.
You can move
Do
to
you wanna-
strike it, too.
You want to strike it or table it?
I move to strike it.
I mean, if honestly, if we're gonna have some review, I mean, it's gonna be more than just a meeting.
Yeah, I would move to strike the ordinance.
I second.
Okay, you did sort of formally make a motion. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, but no one seconded it.
Okay, so there was a motion by trustee Rosner to strike this ordinance, and seconded by trustee Levison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We don't need a roll call to strike the ordinance, do we?
No?
Okey dokey.
I move that ordinance 2014-18 be scheduled for a second reading and the final passage at the October 13th, 24 board meeting, and a public hearing be held at that time. For the reference ordinance, the village clerk is authorized to take the necessary actions to publish public notice for such hearing.
Thank you. This is a motion by trustee Davis Ford.
Second.
Second by trustee Levison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Thank you. Let's move on to the consent agenda.
Resolutions 2014-244 through Resolution 2014-257 are on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
How nice was that? So this is the first meeting where we're not reading every single resolution that's on the consent agenda. This is a fairly standard practice. The resolutions are available on the website, as they always are before the meeting. If people have any questions in the meeting, we're happy to answer them. And this will be posted, of course, afterwards as well. Are there any questions or comments from any trustees?
I have one.
Trustee Clark?
I have one question about the one on the property pilot software, which I forgot what number. It's on number 248. And I know you gave us the explanation on there, but I'd just like the village administrator to give a clearer explanation, because it sounds like, about what the software does, just more for the public, because it does nothing to do with
Yeah, in
pilots.
terms of the functionality, I actually defer to the deputy village administrator. He's been much more involved in it.
Property Pilot will be used as kind of the front-facing application to our public, and really back-end in the sense that forms from the clerk's office, forms that our back-end code enforcement will use, what we'll do is compile all these kind of things and put it into a GIS type of map. What that does, it gives us the ability on our end to organize all these documents on an per-address location. And so when we click on an address, we will find everything from garage sale permits to dog licenses and all that kind of stuff. What we like about this program is, as it's expanding, we're going to be able to expand it across our departments. It's going to take the place of other software that we currently use. So everyone will be using one software that works together. It also helps all of our departments kind of know what's going on, so that it's just a better working environment on our end. The other nice part is the front-facing map provides a lot of the public kind of information that's already available to the public, but it kind of brings it together in one system. And so that'll be a nice feature for our residents.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like, just for the public, explanation on Resolution 252, authorizing change order number 1 for, is it REFAX?
REVAX, yeah, and that was something I was going to mention, but now is as good a time as any to mention it. This was in conjunction with the road project that was recently completed on Glenview, and we were very fortunate, based on the quantities and whatnot. It's actually a deductive change order based on what the original contract amount was and what the ultimate scope of work. I'm trying to get the exact number, but it came in, it was a substantial amount of money.
150 some odd?
And so does that free money up
Yeah,
to
and
do
that-
some additional
It does,
work?
and again, the way we appropriate our funding in the roads, we do identify streets, but we don't limit it to those streets. So
Mhm.
this was, and I want to say it was 180.
It was a reduction of 150,000, 101.85.
And that's
Thank you. Yeah,
That's
you found it quicker
significant.
than I. So, yeah, it was, again, and, kudos to our engineering department, deputy engineer, they stay on top of the contractors, they monitor, we don't do anything we don't need to do, and they keep on top of these people. So this is another example where project came in, so that's $150,000 that's now available for additional road projects. So good news.
Thank you for the clarification.
One other thing worth mentioning, I think, too, is just 251, which is the upgrade for Laserfish. That's something that Mr. Lerner has also been working a lot with. And Laserfish is our incredibly useful and large document management record management system. They have a newer version that allows us to do way more with it, that will help us streamline Oprah processes, that will help us streamline a whole bunch of other things, and will also look nicer than the interface that is on our current website, where you can find public documents. So it's going to make the whole document management, our internal workflow a little bit easier, and turning things over and making them public a little easier too. So that's just something else that Mr. Lerner's been spending a lot of time on. Another really, really great upgrade.
And the last one for me, just to share, this is a long time coming and a good thing, and that's Resolution 246. Can you just give some additional information regarding, this is for the Farrell Field playground and park area?
Yeah, and this is, again, it is a long time coming, and this awards, and it's actually a two-part contract. The first one is actually the playground equipment and installation, and the other is for the installation of the fall surface safety related stuff. And this is complete replacement of the playground at Farrell Field, which had become dated. There was issues of, some not urgent, but some safety concerns. I know the rec department spent a great deal of time, including a lot of outreach to the Farrell Field and the neighborhood association, and solicited their input in the type of playground that's being done under the state contract. It's, it's a good value, and I think my understanding is delivery should be in 8 to 12 weeks, and this will be an installation later this year. So come spring, the kids will have a brand new playground.
Thank you.
Okay, so the most important resolution I thought that nobody touched on was 250. Can we give an update on what that is?
We can, and
great.
Yeah, because this is obviously, you talk about long time coming, much awaited. It's really the significance of the underlying transaction, but this is actually approving a lease with the new purchaser, which the closing did occur, and it's now public record. And it's actually the developer, the Gateway at Ayuso, has now acquired the properties. It's actually a number of parcels that are all aggregated in the corner of Church Street and South Orange Avenue, a couple of which have been cleared and are currently vacant, but a couple of which have some very dilapidated eyesores right prominently on the corner. You'll recall, under our developers agreement with Jonathan Rose, there was funds available for interim parking. We had discussed this and hoped to reach an agreement with the prior owner that was not getting very far, but subsequently the property has changed hands. So this is a lease, technically, whereby we make a payment out of funds that are being provided by Jonathan Rose, not of our own funds, towards the new owner. Will be demolishing those eyesores, grading and improving it to provide interim parking, to supplement the parking for our commuters and residents during the pendency of the construction of the deck on 3rd and Valley. So it's obviously it's always good news to get additional parking. It's even better news to see those structures come down, and we certainly will be sure to make sure that everybody knows it, and I think everybody's going to see it, and I would expect upon approval of this lease that's going to happen relatively quickly. So
that was my
extremely
question.
Good news.
And I think what's important too, noting not obviously only moving forward with the parking and moving forward with taking these buildings down that have been, I know we've probably all gotten complaints about them for years. And it's just like at the, as you're coming down South Orange Avenue, you have this like beautiful view of the town, Performing Arts Center, and then you got these buildings that are falling apart. That it was bought by someone who has become a very committed, generous, diligent person in this town. In the Gateway, we're all pretty excited about opening very soon, and so I think one of the things that it's always difficult for us in the position that we're in is trying to create an environment where There are landlords, there are, good landlords and bad landlords, and we have a couple bad ones in town, and we have a couple really good ones. And we have an environment where the good ones are starting to reinvest back into South Orange. And that's really exciting, right? It's not like it's people coming out of nowhere, left field, who's this person? And that's okay too. Jonathan Rose kind of, this is their first project in New Jersey, and we're very excited about that. But it's also great to have people who have a history of doing work and investing in the town, choosing to reinvest and reinvest and reinvest. And I think that is that shows how good a lot of the work that so many people are doing to try and bring this downtown, continue to bring it forward. So this is a smaller piece of even something larger, but it's still a great sort of step, as we continue to improve our downtown.
Just one other is that it represents about 50 parking spaces, the temporary parking spaces that we'll have.
That's where all the people on Ward are going to go park.
Yeah, right. I just would like to make another point back on the Laserfiche. The Laserfiche and the property pilot will both be linked together, where the repository for the property pilot will be Laserfiche. And so there is a interface that's being developed between the two.
Yeah, and what's also important is that some of these products like Laserfiche and Property Pilot are fairly heavyweight pieces of software, and they do actually integrate and work together, which is really nice. It's not all these different standalone pieces.
Walter.
253. What were the salaries that were incorrectly stated on 2014-253?
Yeah, and just to clarify, and you may remember this from last year, and then when the spreadsheet was pulled up, the old one was inadvertently. So one was simply the omission of the office manager position, which is inadvertently omitted, and then the other was not the chief magistrate, but the other magistrate position. Last year's, there had been a transposition of 4 and a 9, and so when this year, when the 2% was applied, they inadvertently used the wrong number from last year, the 24.9 instead of the 29.4. So it just flips to 2% on what was the corrected, which was corrected in a subsequent ordinance last year. Those are the only two.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, do you have a motion?
I want to make a comment on 255 and 256, which are resolutions that are going to result in executive session minutes being posted, released and posted on our website. I reviewed those for release and noted that with respect to, and there are a few additional minutes that are under review that are going to be approved subsequently also for release, but I've noticed that some of the minutes reflect that I recused myself from executive session discussion of JAC, and some of them don't. But I just want the record to reflect that, with the exception of one meeting where I was asked to comment on the term of the JAC agreement, all discussion of JAC was not with me present in the room, that I recused myself. So I just wanted that on the record.
Is that accurately reflected in the minutes now?
They are not. It is not.
In some cases it is.
Because in some cases it's not. But I'm just putting it on the record now.
But I mean, should the minutes not be updated to reflect what happened?
We could do that, but I'd rather not delay them being posted. They're long overdue to be released. And I think this statement on the record is sufficient to make that clear.
I guess my one question would be, are you certain there are no other statements that anybody else would need to make to clarify any other inconsistencies that might exist?
We should have read them all.
Well, we've all went through those, and we're with that exception, we're comfortable with the minutes.
Just one other thing on the closed session minutes. Steve is going to start a new process for introducing the closed session minutes, that being the next meeting.
Yeah,
those
and
minutes.
further to that point, and this was brought about as we looked into it, and was something I had noticed early on, and then was told, well, we don't do it that way, and maybe should have pressed the point earlier, but certainly going forward, we're going to be following what I would consider the customary practice, that when you are presented with minutes, draft minutes, you will also get draft executive session minutes. At that meeting, they will both then be listed on agenda for approval as to content. Any questions or potential changes and discussion of the executive session minutes would obviously have to occur in executive session. They will then be approved. Nevertheless, executive session minutes, once approved, remain confidential until such time, and under the statute, for those of you who may or may not be aware, the statute requires us to periodically review and authorize the release of any portions of executive session minutes for which the basis for which they were in executive session no longer exists. So it's a contract negotiation, and you've now resolved it, or, you know, a property acquisition and it's been bought, and there's no strategy in there that's going to come back in some future transaction. The law requires us to say, okay, there's no longer a reason to keep this confidential. We release it, and that's what Mr. Rother was kind enough to undertake and go through all these accrued minutes, and then he did review it with me, and I'm in 100% agreement with what he's done. And then going forward, we'll be doing the contemporaneously approving the content of the executive session minutes, and then periodically, and we're going to settle on a schedule for a review by counsel and myself with recommendations then for periodic releases of those portions.
And as a matter of fact, that process is set forth in Resolution 257. That once the administrator determines that there is no longer the need for confidentiality, and I have reviewed for redaction those small sections that may still require confidentiality. For instance, personnel comments about individuals' performance, those kinds of things remain confidential forever and would be redacted. And that Resolution 257 sets forth that process.
So
Question
Steve,
on
there were executive minutes that were released, 15, 20 years ago with sections redacted about negotiations on various things, whether it was police contracts or property development. Does anyone ever go back and look at those, and how could we do those? Because most of us weren't on the board then, you weren't there. I mean, who would make the decision that those don't have to be redacted anymore, or it just stays that way?
Here's what we do know, that with time, everything can be released with just a couple of exceptions.
The personnel.
And the exceptions are comments about personnel, and also matters regarding union negotiation philosophy, that sort of thing. That we would maintain as confidential in futuro, so that to the extent that there are any lingering executive session minutes that should be looked at, we can do it with that lens.
Process question. If, upon reviewing executive session minutes, we were to want to change or request a change, Barry said that we have to do that in closed session as well. So how would we formally request that change? Would we have to?
You would, when it's proposed for a vote, anyone who had a request for a change would so indicate. You would go into executive session, discuss it, come to agreement what the minute should reflect, and make the change.
And yeah, to the extent it's something, clerical or non-substantive, I don't know that we need to adjourn, but again, you'll be getting them contemporaneously in your package with the regular minutes. You'll have the weekend to review them and know in advance of that night's executive session, and just ask that, the minutes be listed as an item when we go upstairs, and then clarify, wait, I think this is what we agree to, and if everybody's on board, motion, then they get amended, and then we go.
Yeah. And one last comment on 255 and 256. They were separated based on date, so that those of you who were in office during the prior to the last election can vote alone on 255. All of you can vote on 256. So those two resolutions have to be pulled out for separate. Well, no, only 255 is to be pulled out for separate vote.
Okay, so we'll do 255 separately.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments, or do I have a motion for the rest of the consent agenda for everything minus 255? Motion by Trustee Levison.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Rosner. Can we have the roll, please?
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Levison?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Collins?
Yes.
Thank you.
I move 256.
255.
5, I'm sorry.
Yes, and 255 should only be voted on by trustees Davis Ford, trustees Levinson, and Rosner.
I second.
Okay, seconded, moved by trustee Levison, seconded by trustee Davis Ford. Could we have the roll?
Trustee Levison?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Yes.
Thank you.
Glad I didn't have to break the tie on that one. Get it, because there's 3. At this point, why don't we move on? Thank you. I will be here all night.
We didn't get to Sheena's report.
Right.
Yeah, that's right, that's what I'm saying.
Actually, before conference agenda, I move that we do Sheena's report next week. And she can do it in solitary.
All right, at this time, I'd like to open the meeting up to any public comments, if there's anybody who wishes to speak. Okay, seeing as there are no public comments, I'd like to close public comments and ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Don't we still have to do 256?
No, it's just 255 that came out separately.
Okay.
So the motion to adjourn.
I move.
Seconded by trustee Rosner, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, special meeting is adjourned. You know, I always feel like we should do something in between the special and the conference meeting. Switch chairs.
Got a joke, or?
Do a
Seventh inning
dance.
Bathroom break?
Yeah, this is
Oh,
Okay, I'd like to call this conference agenda meeting to order at 9:47 PM. Can we have the roll, please?
Village President Torpy?
Here.
Trustee Clark?
Here.
Trustee Column?
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford?
Here.
Trustee Levison?
Present.
Trustee Rosner?
Here.
Trustee Schnall?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Lerner?
Here.
Mr. Rother?
Still here.
Susan Caljean, present. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the press in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6. In addition, notice of this meeting was posted in Village Hall and on the village website and has been filed in the office of the village clerk. Official action may not be taken. Susan Caljean, village clerk.
Great, thank you. So I got a couple quick updates. One is, so as everybody here knows and anybody who is watching may know, I started at Seton Hall this fall as a co-teaching a class. It's an adjunct faculty member in governance and technology, and the class is a strategic management and collaborative governance class in the Master of Public Administration program with Professor Matt Hale. So I just wanted to just kind of briefly, let everybody know how amazing the class is, how great the students are. We've had 2 classes already. They've both been really great. This Tuesday, we have for the next 4 or 5 classes, we have speakers coming in talking about different areas related to public administration. And so on Tuesday, we have Chris Daggett, who was a former gubernatorial candidate here in New Jersey as an independent, and who's also the president of the Dodge Foundation, and Randy Solomon, who runs, and I think founded Sustainable Jersey. And so one of the topics that we'll be discussing on this Tuesday, for example, are how nonprofits can work with government agencies to help deliver public services more efficiently than a government can. So we've had that discussion here many times, actually, with the Rescue Squad, with YouthNet, with the Community Coalition on Race, and many others. It's the Performing Arts Center that we're in. And so it's a really great exercise for the students to kind of think about how the best way to get the services that need to be delivered to the people, and is the government the best one to always connect those dots, and sometimes it's not.
So you're teaching a class where you bring in guest speakers?
Yes. And so anyway, so the class is going to be really great. We've got a bunch more guest speakers coming in, and then we kind of move to our project portion of the class, which is the students actually going out and trying to get one ordinance passed in a town that they've been assigned. They have to take the Citizens Campaign has a course on their website, the Citizen Legislator course that teaches people how to go to a town council meeting or approach a local government and propose a new idea or a new ordinance in a way that's very constructive. So we've certainly all seen the differences in people approaching things in a constructive or destructive way. And one of the things that we want to get imparted to the students is that there's a constructive way to do it. And if your goal is actually getting the thing done, and you can take these couple steps to make it most likely as possible to get your thing done, that's really valuable to learn. And that as people who are future government administrators, to see what someone who's an advocate or an activist and they're trying to get something done, to see what they're going through, and then to sit on the other side is going to be a really valuable experience. So they've all got assigned different towns in Essex County, and I believe someone will have South Orange. I don't know if I have to like recuse myself double for that meeting or whatever, to have a student from a class that I'm teaching at Seton Hall come in and try and propose an ordinance. We'll see.
Double recusal is actually inclusion.
What's that?
Double recusing is actually inclusion.
Like a
I guess
double
it's
negative?
Yeah.
It's like a double.
All right, so maybe it has to be a triple. Anyway, so just really excited about the class. I mean, the students are just really great, you know, and this is just going to be a great experience, I think, for them. And it's still a great learning experience, you know, for me and I think for the other professor as well. On sort of a related note, one of the people that's coming to the class on Tuesday, Sustainable Jersey has created a task force of sort of technology and communication, local government leaders from across the state. It's called the Community Information and Civic Engagement Task Force. And Sustainable Jersey actually does tremendously more than just environmental sustainability kind of initiatives. And this is one of them. So we've got a couple business administrators, myself, a handful of people in local media, and a whole bunch of others. There's maybe 20 or 25 altogether. And we got together once. We're getting again in a couple weeks. And just looking at best practices for how towns communicate with residents during emergencies, during non-emergencies. How do you collect feedback? What are the pros and cons of different, you know, online citizen engagement platforms? We're going through all these really great discussions, you know, that are bringing people out from different areas of expertise, and hopefully being able to make recommendations to towns on how they could kind of do better with all these different things. So that's pretty interesting as well, and just a great initiative from Sustainable Jersey. The last thing that I wanted to update about quickly was on Wednesday, there's an Urban Mayors Roundtable on Public Safety that we've been invited to. It's being hosted by the Mayor of Newark. And so there's a whole bunch, it's a whole kind of day event. I'm not sure we're going to be able to be there for the whole day. I think Trustee Collin might be joining me for part of it at least.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great. A whole bunch of other mayors, police chiefs, other public safety folks will be there talking about some of the programs that they do. We've got some good things in town that we can talk about, and hopefully, you know, learn a little bit about what some other towns do as well. So that's just a great, you know, I guess some of these updates have sort of gone along the lines of, you know, lots of people from different fields getting together and talking about some of the things they're doing. And we just obviously have so much to learn from each other that these opportunities are really great. So hopefully I'll have a little bit of an update after we have that meeting for people.
And I would really be
as well.
interested, and I was talking to Trustee Coleman about this, is to see what you come back from the other towns compared to what we do in regards to community policing with the relationships between the residents and the police, and also what sort of professional development or investment they're making in the area of conflict, the area of how to diffuse a situation, and as an investment in the police that they have, and of course something that I would like to see if that can be something we can implement here, because we have an incredible police force.
We do, and I mean, you know, and highlighting the fact, highlighting how to do policing the right way, you know, especially today is really important. Not just so that, you know, when appropriate, especially like in South Orange, trying to continue to build the trust between our residents and our police, which is one of the best things that you can do to prevent crime, as we all know, but to also set an example for other police departments. And I do think that our police department does do that generally. You know, it's amazing, not just on this, I mean, this is a semi-separate note, but, you know, I've certainly brought it up before. It's just amazing going out of town and talking with other people about the things that we're doing here, and hearing people's opinions about what we're doing here is amazing, because, I mean, without question, people, and it's happening more and more and more, you know, people have heard really great things about what we're doing, and whether it's from the police department, whether it's from redevelopment, whether it's from environmental. I mean, there's a million different areas where, you know, you go to an event or a conference or a panel or something, and people are like, oh, South Orange, you guys have the, you know, X, Y, or Z program. And even some of the stuff that we've been able to do with Seton Hall, I've gotten questions from people now that I don't think we would have gotten as a town 5 years ago, which is people saying, how are you guys doing such a good job building a relationship with your university? And that's amazing. That's amazing to hear that from people that are kind of watching things transpire.
And there's nothing more important than to protect the public trust.
Absolutely. So I'll have a little bit more of an update after that. I don't know why there seem to be so many of those kinds of things happening right now, but they're all really interesting and good learning experiences, and hopefully I'll kind of keep updating folks as those happen. Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I will try and be brief. I did provide a monthly report that touched on a number of items. Given my place in the agenda, it's awfully tempting to preempt a number of things off Trustee Collins' report, but I won't. So a number of those were touched upon, and I'm sure. So just briefly, I will touch upon a few I think that people should be aware of that may or may not be addressed. I try and not to steal everybody's thunder from their committee reports. It's difficult. But I do want to talk about just briefly a lot of the exciting things that have been going on some of our road projects, and we're making a lot of progress on a lot of projects. The Rodway River dredging, I believe, is now completed. Curb and sidewalk program is underway, and I think most of you have probably already seen the Spiota Park sidewalk is nearly complete, which was falling apart, which is good, particularly for the timing with Play Day and other events coming up. I did, and Trustee Clark was kind enough to point out to me that where I referenced the Skate House Duck Pond will be out to bid in 2 months, I somehow had it being completed this summer, so I meant next summer, obviously. So the expectation is that would go out to bid over the winter months, have a contractor lined up to get that work going in the spring and complete next year. Road projects, Glenview was completed again. That was at the substantial savings. Was happy with the success of, we did a recent mill and overlay project on Spear, Overhill, and Foster, which we utilized in Morris County Purchasing Cooperative, which I had a lot of experience in prior locations in Morris County, but it's really a great program where they have a contract with Tilcon, who's probably one of, if not the biggest asphalt companies in the state, and by using the co-op, and it's based on unit prices and quantities, it's really a very fast process, a very efficient process, save a lot of even our own engineering time in preparing specs and going out to bid and bid bonds and the attendant costs associated with that. So that project was done, to my knowledge, done relatively quickly. Perhaps Trustee Davis Ford can speak to it, because that go off without a hitch. You get any complaints from your neighbors? Seemed to go very smoothly. They get in, they get out. The whole thing took place over literally a matter of a week or two, and brand new road surface.
Yeah.
So I know our village engineer and deputy engineer were both, I think, very happy with the way it worked out. So we'll be hoping to use that resource in the future. That project also came in a significant amount underneath what we had awarded. We awarded as a not to exceed, so I don't know the exact number, but I want to say it was close to $70,000. So between the two, we're over $200,000 in money we can kind of repurpose for additional road projects. Blanchard Crest Circle, just a heads up, because that's one we've talked about for a little bit. And I addressed it in the report. When they got out there and did the field work, because of the grades of some of the properties, their driveways actually extended out into the roadway at a fairly steep grade and created some drainage problems. So I believe that the plan is now to kind of shrink the cartway, which was oversized to begin with, which will allow those driveways to stay on their property. But because of that and the redesign associated with it, that's likely going to be a project for 2015.
Yeah, it's more involved.
I have a question about the additional money that can be repurposed for additional road work. Will that happen this year?
To the extent we do have the running list of projects and ranked in priority. The only things that could likely get turned around that quickly, and that's certainly not out of the question, are ones that are suitable for a mill and overlay, where they go and grind it and they just pave it and not a reconstruct. So we're examining to see whether there are some, roads up high enough on the priority list to warrant that expenditure. Alternatively, we're hopefully going to try and consolidate that money with existing monies in next year's budget to have a bigger
And roll that into
sort
next
of
year's
war chest.
capital?
Yeah, and typically, Sal would have to try to take the amount of money that was saved and size it to a road that can be done for under that amount of money. And one that's high on the list of priority roads.
I have some additional questions, but I'm going to save it for when you do your report, so.
Well, he's already stolen most of my thunder anyway.
Yes,
Sorry.
I know. And I just realized
I'll
that,
get
so I'm
Sheena
going to,
next
I'm
time.
going to save
Like
some,
I
I'm
can get
going
into
to
some of
save
this
it so you can have some
public safety
thunder.
stuff and make it a lot quicker.
Could you do
I don't know who else,
public safety for
but
us, too?
just a couple quick points. Gateway is
He's so bad. Want me to kick
very
him?
nearing
Zingers.
completion, and we expect COs to be issued literally any day now. Tenants will be moving in, which is obviously exciting. We will be coordinating with the developer for ribbon cutting and an event. Certainly, we will include you all in the notice and encourage everyone and the public to attend. Upon issuance of COs, that'll trigger the final affordable housing payment, so continue to add to our existing affordable housing fund. Third and closing, again, the closing was done. The rescue squad, they got their planning approval on Sloan Street. They're receiving bids, I believe, this week from contractors. And hopefully, if that all goes according to plan and within budget, we expect to see activity there within the next month or two. We touched upon the interim parking coming on Church Street. Again, and I'll leave it at that again, because a lot of these things I touched upon are likely going to be on some of the trustee reports. So I'll leave it at that unless people have questions.
Thank you. Mr. Rother?
Very briefly, we're working with our consultants and Trustee Levison and Clark to get ready for our presentation next Monday. And I think we'll leave to that presentation some of the details of what we could report tonight.
Thank you. Trustee Levison?
Yeah, I just have a few items. We had our meeting this past Friday. One of the items is that we're now moving to review the audit from last year. That should be available for review by the board and for passage by the next meeting. A couple of the resolutions or some of the discussion we had before were items that we discussed in finance, Laserfish, property pilot. One of the other resolutions we didn't talk about, we're now requiring a link between the fire department and the police department CAD system, which now unifies across the public safety departments. They now have the ability of having now a computer-aided dispatch, which is using the same database, in essence, between the two facilities. Both Property Pilot and Laserfish. The other is that, and I'm going to leave it to Steve, talk about Peak Democracy and the web rollout.
You want me to do that now?
Yeah, yeah.
So in the case of what we're looking to do is we're going to go live with the website. It'll initially just be sort of a soft launch, meaning we won't do a wide promotion of it. It will still be, it'll still be available to be used. And at the same time, several software tools will become available, including Peak Democracy. And as we've talked about that tool in the past, we'll begin with a question for residents to ask them. It will be a polling opportunity where one of the subcommittees, which, Howard, you're involved with, is discussing the policies for how we will choose discussions topics. And so that is something to look out for in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah.
And just a couple other items. We have now completed the implementation of a new voice recording system for the police department, and we had a finalization of our discussion on radio communications for the various public safety. I'll leave that for Sheena to fill in the rest.
I was going to let you fill it in. You can go ahead.
Sure. We have basically decided to move forward with the state system called P25. The first phase of it being with our rescue squad, and we're in the process of implementing that in the rescue squad and transferring the dispatch function from Union County to what's called REMS, which is out of the Newark Hospital. The second phases will be looking at the police department. I think we had a presentation at the last meeting of the communication consultant. We're now looking at the cost for the various radio purchase options. After the police department, we'll then look at the fire department if we can integrate that within the P25 radio network. This is a statewide system using a newer technology than we currently have, which is becoming obsolete. That's it.
Okay, Trustee Rosner?
You're skipping, we're going personnel.
Am I?
It's okay.
Trustee Davis Ford?
We had a meeting earlier, and I won't go into detail because we discussed it earlier this evening and voted and passed it on first reading. And the purpose of the special legal and personnel meeting was to fully vet the changes that were being considered, making sure that everyone here thought it was the best way to go and were comfortable about it. And as a result, we discussed it and passed it on first reading, the amendment to the pay-to-play ordinance. We had a full regular meeting on August the 11th, and we talked about, and Adam, I just wanted to know if you had any updates on the Village Hall safety policies. Basically, the actual employees who work in Village Hall, in regards to if there are any a fire or anything like that, that they can safely know how to exit and then where to regroup, to reconvene, to come back.
Yeah, so we're putting together kind of a contingency plan for fire safety or any other kind of scenario that could take place in Village Hall. And we're putting that plan together so that we have materials outside the building and we're prepared for whatever else could happen. So, yeah, no, we are working with that, and we're identifying individuals within the department that will be kind of our team leaders, as well as we're looking for training for CPR, AED, those kind of training, just so that we have that within our staff, so in case something happens, we're prepared.
Thank you. And we also we're really looking at the status of recodification, and I think Howard, Trustee Levinson, there's one issue that you wanted to look out for our next meeting.
Well, it's the beginning of looking at more of the ordinance, all of our ordinances, to see if they still are applicable. The one in particular was, the first one in the list was alarms, which is totally obsolete, which needs to be reviewed, and I think we need to go through each one of them to see if they're still applicable and or modify the code.
Councilor Ross, do you have anything, did you like to add in regards to this?
No, there's still some cleanup things that are necessary on that job. How are we on the fees? Because that's one of the key missing pieces as well. Fees and a review for some of the ordinances which may not be so obvious that they're obsolete. General code focused on a few, but there are some that only those that have really close connection to their use would recognize that they may or may not be obsolete.
We are reaching out to every department and collecting or updating any fee that needs to be changed. Once we have kind of a master sheet of all the fees that is throughout town, we'll present that to the board.
Okay. And something that seems to never go away, and that's the Stone House. And I don't think there's been any change regarding the status of the Stone House. So we'll leave it as such. And just to save some thunder for my trustee Clark, we won't talk about our discussion regarding Ludington Brook. We'll leave that for your report.
There's no update on it.
Okay, great. I was trying to give you some thunder, but I'm going to leave it at also. I'm not going to give an update on that. But the other, there are a couple more things I just want to talk about, and one is the wellness initiative, and there's several moving parts of this, and this is from the Health Committee. They have been some great programs that just have low attendance, and that's in partnership with St. Barnabas. And one is where they have an opportunity for people to learn how to cook healthy, but in a very fun and informative way. And the reward for sitting and learning is to be shown by a chef how to cook healthy but make great tasting food for, to have better blood pressure, or if you have diabetes, or maybe even if you're concerned about obesity. And so I'll be working with the director of community outreach, along with our health officer, John Fester, to see if we can increase awareness of this program and attendance. And there are several other programs that we're looking at, all demographics in our community. And basically, by demographics, I'm really talking about age. And the other group that we're looking at is a program for middle school where they learn how to read labels, and so that this becomes a habit that will be ingrained in them, so that they can be trained and make informed, healthy eating choices by doing that. And then and often it involves a field trip, and it's also this program that it will be that exists for high school students, where it's a field trip. They take them right to the supermarket, and they learned how to pull out real items and get an understanding on how to do that for healthy eating for themselves in the future. And then there's another initiative that we're looking for, wellness for our employees, for their health, and also there is a cost component. It is really, really beneficial to have healthy employees. They perform better. They're allowed to, be more efficient in their role in servicing the residents. But in addition to that, there's a cost variable. It keeps the cost, one of the biggest cost drivers we have, to the cost of paying for personnel are the health benefits. And taking the lead on setting up that meeting with St. Barnabas to talk about a wellness program is Trustee Levinson. Would you like to add something to that?
Well, it's just one of the components, and we've asked St. Barnabas if they have a employee health program. It's part of, we currently use them for our compensation doctors and program. So it would just be an additional feature, and they've been receptive of looking at the program and making a proposal to us. So we're just trying to set up a meeting with them.
And I'd like to have also talk about, we had a great, the annual health fair. We had an attendance, the numbers I see here are over 110 people. Again, this is something in the future that we really need to drive greater attendance, because I think all the trustees here attended, and it is really, really well done. I mean, the quality of representatives from every aspect in health, as far as what I mean by that, meaning you can get your blood pressure done, you can have your eyes checked, you can donate blood, you can get your cholesterol checked, you can get your hearing checked, everything that you would need, it is available to get done right then and there, as well as get additional information. And of course, I've left out numerous other things. And so it was well done, we had a good attendance, but we really, really, I'm committed to doing a better job and asking the trustees to help me to really market and let people know of this valuable, the benefit of learning and understanding about your health, and truly getting these medical tests available to you and get the results right then and there. And finally, and so I want to say congratulations to John Festa for a great job, because he really, really does all the heavy lifting and the work and all the partnerships that he's developed with St. Barnabas, with some of the other people I can't name that participate in this fair. And then finally, I want to just say a great thank you to our administrator, Barry Lewis, and our deputy administrator for coordinating a wonderful employee appreciation event. Adam was sharing with us, as a result of the work that Barry and Adam to coordinate this, that the response that we received from the employees, that they were grateful for the Board of Trustees and the administration to show them that they were very valued with this activity. And so this has been a part of a year-long policy to create opportunities to invest in our employees and show that they're appreciated, so that they know that they're valued and can continue to serve our residents well. So that's it for me.
Okay. Trustee Rosner.
The Planning and Zoning Committee, the meeting was canceled last month because too many people couldn't make it. We are meeting on September 17th. One of the items we will be taking up are the two items that you asked me to review with Tony Glenchi regarding the buildings. I did speak to him about it already, and Ward Place and a couple of other items. So that will be the next meeting, September 17th, 7:30.
Trustee Collins.
I move to recess.
It looks like a lot, but it really isn't. Trustee Levison, thanks for covering some of the CAD, RMS, and radio system updates. Pedestrian safety. This is something that I normally talk about during my public safety reports. One of the things that we did over the past month or so was we started going into the schools. So we were at the Country Day School, which was amazing. We actually brought the children, 4 and 5, to a crosswalk and had them cross, and it was amazing and it was exciting, and I just wanted to jump up and down and cheer because they were just bright, wonderful little people. And then for the 2 and 3-year-olds, we kind of just used sidewalk on the, chalk on the sidewalk, and had them walk there and kind of learn the rules. And the Traffic Bureau was also at the middle school barbecue orientation to talk to parents and children. That's one of the areas of the town that is a little bit challenging, but with the restriping of the crosswalks, some of the delineators over there at the middle school, right in front of there, and hopefully the restriping will be beginning within the next couple weeks or so, Mr. Lewis? Yep.
Maybe even this week.
That's great. That was the other part, is that very good feedback from people to learn that we're going to be doing all the crosswalks. But in terms of the education, very exciting, and the enforcement measures are going to continue, and hopefully the Country Day School will have some public art for us shortly on what pedestrian safety means to them.
Not every single crosswalk.
Not every single
There's a couple
crosswalk.
where the roads are going to be redone, and obviously have to wait until after. Sorry.
Great. And now on to, that was exciting. Now this is really exciting.
They just can't leave you any thunder, huh?
We're at Super Jazz right now. So one of the things that I've been talking about, and I haven't quite figured out, and none of the smart people I talk to quite figure out, is how can we objectively measure speeding? When residents bring to us that they're speeding on the block, what moves us to authorizing a road safety audit? How do we then invest in capital improvements to a road? It is so challenging, and it has always been the loudest neighborhood that comes out or brings it to our attention or can mobilize people, and we kind of want to move towards the direction of street paving. Similarly, have it be more objective, let us understand what the real problem is, and then take it from there. So in researching where I could find a policy like this, lo and behold, Maplewood, New Jersey has got it. They have got an amazing Maplewood. Their engineering department
Maplewood,
does.
sure.
Lovely Maplewood. But they have a great traffic calming policy. The Transportation Advisory Committee was supposed to meet last week, but because it landed the same night as the Planning Board, it's going to be pushed up to this week. But essentially, it took things such as speeding, volume, whether it is an area where children cross to get to the schools, and creates a point system. So by the time you get to a certain point system, then it authorizes next steps. So I think this might be a good starting point that I'd like to hear back from some of our professionals on SOTAC to see if we can get a board policy like this. And I'm going to also bring it to the Public Safety Committee, but between those two committees, I hope we'll have something for introduction at the next meeting. Next, downtown after sundown funding. This is something I forgot during the last meeting, and I apologize for it. If you recall, a couple months ago, the board of the Village Center Alliance had approached the Board of Trustees to see if we would help fill the gap between where they were fundraising for downtown after sundown and where they couldn't quite get there, if the village would be willing to kick in for that. We did discuss this in the Public Safety Committee because, as you probably recall, this actually kind of existed as a public safety initiative along with creating a vibrant downtown. And the recommendation out of our committee to the board was for us to continue financially supporting that initiative to whatever deficit that SAVCA couldn't make up in their own fundraising. On a personal note, I think it's wonderful that they're helping manage the program, but ultimately, I think this was a board initiative. So if it comes down to a funding question, to the extent that we make sure that they're able to do this, as it's critical to our weekends, I'm sure our police chief would tell you the same thing. We need to make sure it's always funded, and they shouldn't be tapping into their own operating budget to provide it for the village.
I agree with you so heartily. This is one of the examples that I feel so good about how the village, along with our police department, approached a situation that could have been contentious, and we came up with a creative way, and it's made a big difference, and it was our initiative, and we should fund it.
Didn't, we can check with village administrator, but didn't we actually put money in that budget for the village, for the downtown after sundown funding, was included in their budget on their list of items, where we put in, I think, $12,000 or something? And secondly, you know, the question I have about downtown after sundown, originally, there was a time when we started the concerts actually before Memorial Day, and we continued them up until, I think, October 1st, or maybe a little later. And I know this year we shrunk the calendar on it, and I don't know if we should revisit that, or if it's just better to keep it this timing. And you know, maybe with the police chief's input about the activity in the downtown at Friday and Saturday nights, would it be helpful to have those concerts, assuming we can get the funding for them, to continue through the first weekend in October and start them, you know, in the spring, if possible. But did we include something?
Well, no, actually, in their budget, they anticipate a revenue that's listed as sundown income, but that was, the expectation was going to be done through fundraising. So the amount that we give them as their annual stipend does not include that, because, again, the expectation was they were going to raise that. I mean, it does show as an income, but it says sundown income, but that's not from us. Do I need to repeat that, or? Just briefly, sorry, my mic was off. No, in their budget, they do show an anticipated income called sundown income, but that was their expectation to do it through fundraising. So our annual assessment that we pay them, it counts our contribution towards the executive director, some of the downtown services that were offsetting DPW stuff that they used to do, and a couple other things, but that was not one of the ones that we were, business recruiter was the other line item. Those are the three that you add up to what we give them.
So I think the question tonight, and at least from the recommendation from the committee, again, I'm sorry I didn't introduce it for action, but I think it's something that the administration can handle, is that whatever that deficit was, and this is going back when Mr. Glass was here explaining kind of the budget aspect of this, is that I imagine it's probably a couple $1,000s, not more than that, but we strongly felt that the village's role in continuing this and not putting the onus on them to find sponsors for something that's so really important to the village itself.
It's just, you know, I understand, you know, because they have a lot of trouble, you know, always finding sponsors, although they did a pretty amazing job of finding sponsors for their own event when they know there's no other money coming forth. And, you know, you like to see that same effort go forth towards finding sponsors for this. And a few years ago, you know, we'd also talked about how the restaurants benefit the most from these downtown after sundown concerts. And we just, it's a continuing disappointment that the restaurants don't step up and put up some of the sponsorships for this. And, you know, and I don't know how we can do that and work with Bob Zuckerman or Bob Zimmerman to, or Bob Zuckerberg, or all three of them, to see if we can work on that, on that sponsorship.
So is there any objection to that? Is that authorizing, allowing the administration to work with SOFCA to figure out whatever deficit they ran with downtown after sundown, or how do you feel about it?
Well, as I stated earlier, I think it was our initiative. It's something that has served us extremely well. I think that we should take that responsibility and not burden that expense on another entity. My only thing that I would request, though, if we can get a good faith effort of helping with getting sponsors. That's what I would ask of them, to help us with that, a real good faith effort. And the reward for that is that we would be responsible for any financial deficit.
Okay, that sounds fair. Is everyone okay with that? Moving on in the report.
Is that something we should formalize?
Yeah, what I was going to suggest was I will follow up with Mr. Zuckerman, see exactly where they stand now, what they project. I guess they're about wrapped up.
They're finished now.
So they're done. So we should have, the dust should have settled where they ended up. And I will report back to the board what that number is and where I can find the money. And then we'll formalize it.
Yeah, I
for the
would
next
think
meeting.
that, yeah, so that next year at this time, we don't have to scratch our heads and wonder, A, where the money's coming from, B, how, yeah, what did we agree? Yeah, let's make it a formula.
Agreed. First night, ongoing updates. The Nerds has been announced as the headline act. I don't know if anybody knows the Nerds. They're like the Jersey Shore band. So that's kind of one of the...
Oh, wow, I can't wait to go see them.
Exactly. So that was announced last month, and they're continuing to bring in more acts. And then I'll probably turn this one over to Trustee Clark. One of the things we talked about was identifying things that, from the police department's perspective, that if we could have more people be able to enforce some of these quality of life things out on the streets. Trustee Clark, do you want to take it from there?
Right, yeah, I guess the synopsis is that at the present time, only the police can enforce certain, what we're calling quality of life concerns. One example would be shrubberies on the borders of properties and town right-of-ways that may block a driver's view of oncoming traffic, that sort of thing. And one of the things we have discussed is moving towards what Mr. Rother referred to as an omnibus approach, wherein the code enforcement officials could also basically enforce those, and potentially the DPW in some cases as well, where you've got again, shrubberies that say they grow off a property, but then start to obscure a stop sign or start to obscure some other important traffic sign. So we want to make it basically a situation where we have more village representatives who can be a part of enforcing these things. Because frankly, that means we'll have more eyes on the street and more people who can do something about it.
Is there anything, can we, if everybody agrees with that, can we prepare an ordinance? Is this an amendment?
I'm starting to look at that, at those questions right now, a number of them. They were brought to my attention by Trustee Levison.
So we'll keep it in
and
committee for
I've been
now?
looking
I
at
had
that.
asked Steve to prepare something.
Okay,
Yeah, I
great.
think we would want to probably get a better sense of exactly which instances we are talking about, and whether or not they can be approached omnibus, or whether or not they would be, because there are going to be some things where, especially with interaction with the public, where you would probably want it to be just police force, because they are trained to interact with the public, but there may be some other things that, it's perhaps better for the Public Works Department to deal with, because they're in a position to change it fairly quickly, so.
Okay. Steve, we have public safety at the end of the month. It's the fourth Tuesday in the month. Do you think we could have whatever you're sending to Trustee Levison come to public safety? Trustee Clark and myself are both there.
What date?
Last fourth Tuesday. I don't know exactly what that means.
Fourth Tuesday.
22nd, maybe?
Okay.
23rd. Great. Moving, and now this is going to go really fast. Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. We have a town hall meeting. Can they Zoom on me? Zoom? We have a town hall meeting on October 26th. That's a Sunday. It is going from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. I think I've sent the details to the Board of Trustees. Now we're out there advertising. We're hoping to have the board, some of our department heads. We're working with the senior buildings, parking authority on some transportation. So it should be a good event. So mark your calendars.
Bingo.
I'm sorry, of course everybody's gonna be there. And I also want to invite the board members to join me. I'm on a normal rotation now with our senior homes. And I found the last meeting that I had with both the buildings really rewarding. So every other month, I swing in for an hour to each building. You saw the spreadsheet that I sent out to the group, and I just really want to thank the administration, the department heads. Things that the seniors had brought to our attention were resolved very quickly and professionally, and they really appreciated it. So everybody's always welcome to come.
That's a good thing. I like that.
It was a really good time. And then next, we had a meeting to discuss transportation and senior routes throughout the town, and this was fantastic. It was between Recreation, Parking Authority, our administrator, myself, the senior homes, and a few other representatives to talk about our jitney services and our current on-demand services that we provide, and then just trying to get a better inventory and coordinate better, and then be very robust in our marketing and outreach to make sure everybody knows exactly what's available. So as we kind of fine tune that and work with the parking authority on a proposed schedule, that will be coming back to the Board of Trustees. At this point in time, it doesn't seem like there's any budget impact, but if it's widely utilized and all of a sudden we have a lot of people using our transportation services, at that point then there might be an actual budget impact, but we're not there yet. And we will be working on a senior citizens discount card during the fall and the winter, both with Irvington Avenue, Valley Street, the CBD, on special promotions for seniors. Next, Irvington Avenue Corridor Advisory Committee. We have another flyer update on community forum scheduled for September 10th and 11th. So September 10th is this Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. at Congregation Bethel, and then September 11th is Thursday, and we're doing that at night, 7:30 p.m., and it's at the same location. So we wanted to do something in the morning and also at night to make sure that we could get as many people there as possible. And for folks who, are working at night, they choose the morning option and vice versa. So hopefully those will be really well attended, and it's being promoted really well out there. Status on the redevelopment studies. So as committed to this board and to the planning board, the packets, thank you, Mr. Lewis, went out to all the property owners that were identified in the study. If you remember, there was 8 areas representing a few dozen properties that are being studied for an area in need of redevelopment with the condemnation option. And what we had committed to do was essentially, and well beyond what's statutorily required of us, is make sure that they were informed throughout the entire process. So they each received pretty detailed packets, including just frequently asked questions, some of the things that were brought up in the planning board, and an invitation to attend the forums this week. So that is complete. I'm going to skip the community event for October. With Carter Park, what was brought to the Irvington Avenue Committee was a Boy Scout project. And I just want you to know it's coming down the works, that the Irvington Avenue Committee, for the most part, supported kind of the creative idea of children being involved with identifying equipment, things that can improve the park. And so we have linked up this committee with Trustee Schnall's committee to make sure that any proposals have the approval of the appropriate staff in the village. So hopefully within the next couple weeks or so, something will come back to this board. And then the business code updates is, first we have a revised timeline. We're not going to finish anything with what we had set out to do, which was 100 days, and we learned from our first couple meetings that these codes are pretty detailed. They require a lot of time. Something as simple as just looking at kind of facades or design standards, just getting through maybe 2 or 3 points took us a solid 5 hours. And then there's me on the committee, which adds more time anyway. We have a forum scheduled for October 1st This is a way to solicit feedback from the business owners on the codes that they want revised or the suggestions that they have. So that's a Wednesday. It's at 8:30 at SOPAC. Matching grant program. I'm not going to get into too much detail on this, but we did find a Great Streets Neighborhood Business District program, which is matching grants for facade improvements, lighting, et cetera. Pretty good business guideline, but it's something that I want the board to consider for the budget in the upcoming year. Previously, we had the Fronts program, the matching grant program, and this kind of builds upon that a little bit more. COA spending plan revision, I'll skip that for now and come back at the next meeting with a little bit more detail. And then the Board of Trustees Volunteer Appreciation Party, this is for board volunteers, people who are appointed to our various commissions, committees, and boards. We identified that for the 28th. As you heard Mr. Zuckerman say, their rain date is planned for the 28th and we'll adjust accordingly, but hopefully they won't have any rain and we're going to keep our date on the 28th. And so that's from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Invitations went out to all the committee chairs to distribute to their various committee members, board members, commissioners, etc. That wasn't too bad, was it? Great.
Not at all, thank you.
It sounded snarky.
It wasn't, actually, for once. Sort of. Trustee Clark.
We saved some thunder for you, we hope.
Thanks.
With Weddington Park.
Right. So Public Works and Infrastructure, our last meeting was actually a relatively slow one as these goes. The administrator did touch upon a number of the Public Works projects that are going on and moving along. One thing I did want to mention was the Duck Pond and Skatehouse walkway, that the solar lights were finally installed, so I encourage everyone to go take a walk under the solar lights. Take your honey out to the park or something. Also, I just wanted to touch on the Rawway flume cleaning and dredging, just because I did get a bunch of questions from folks reaching out about what was the big pile of dirt next to the river. That was one I think that probably should have been communicated a little better, but that was a required dredging project, and it is, I believe, officially done. They've cleared it, yeah. Let's see. One thing coming up, which I want folks to know about, the River Greenway Committee is organizing with Seton Hall University students, something they did last year, which was team up to help clean up and maintain the plantings along the Rawway River. And SHU has volunteer days, and those days are the 27th of September, October the 25th, and November the 8th. However, I would encourage other folks, if you are interested in helping out with maintaining those plantings along the river, please contact me at my village email address, and we'll try to work in on one of those days. So if you're a gardener or an obsessive weed puller, or you hate invasive species, come help out along with the Seton Hall University.
That was quite the plug.
There are those of us who hate invasive species.
If you hate invasive species, come out.
The last thing is I want to reiterate the community meeting on water next Monday right here at 7:30 p.m. With an update on the status of our relationship with East Orange Water and the future of our water-related issues, as well as a question and answer session. So that is that.
Thank you. Trustee Schnall.
All right, let's, so we'll begin the fund committees with cultural arts report. The big thing is coming up this, in a couple of weeks, the stay and play weekend. But what I want to highlight some of the things that wasn't mentioned, which is the art exhibit, the Insight Outdoor Sculpture exhibit, which is going to be exploring the relationships between art and architecture, including contemporary approaches toward the environment and habitat. So they'll be up for several weeks, and as part of the art and the effect will be how the weather and the environment actually going to age the sculpture. So they will actually be experiencing the changes, and that's what the artists are bringing to it. So that should be interesting. Deborah Davis, Trustee Davis Ford had mentioned, and a couple people have mentioned, Village President, the Gateway developer Ed Ayoso. In addition to the other things that are fairly well known that he is been doing around town. He's also been sponsoring an art exhibit on the mural by the trestle right where his new residents are, but by the Jersey Transit, which is going to be a new art mural. And he has actually given stipends to various artists to put up South Orange-related scenes. That is on track to be done this fall. There was a little bit of a delay having to do with putting up physical structures onto New Jersey Transit property, but we think have found a way around that. But that should be a very exciting new visual for the downtown. On the recreation side, the summer programs are pretty much wound down, and we're into the fall programs, and they went well. I do want to highlight there were a couple of parks that got facelifts, which is good, in addition to the aforementioned Farrell Field, which is getting a whole new playground. Two other play areas have been improved and updated. The one by the community garden off of 3rd Street has a new swing set, so that's a good one. And then Memorial Park, located off of Valley by the train tracks, there's been some upgrades there and improvements as well. Sounds to me like there were several things being promoted by trustees, and I think that's something that we can all do to help each other and use our various connections in the neighborhoods via email, our friends, contacts. So, the Stay and Play Weekend is one. The baseball reenactment is another opportunity to bring together folks to come down, participate, enjoy. And it's actually one of the mandates of the Public Information and Marketing Committee to find new ways via various media, whether it be print, digital, word of mouth, neighborhood, et cetera. So we're continuing to explore that. Anybody has ideas, whether it's on this board or out as citizens, please direct your ideas, thoughts to me as we're trying to implement that as much as possible. For really, the idea, the vision is just to increase volunteer engagement and citizen engagement, not just volunteer. Moving into other committees. Oh, and actually, one other thing I want to mention, we have a volunteer who is going to be present and taking video of the baseball game. And the idea is potentially turning that into a documentary movie. If you think about all the things that are coming together for that event, you got fun things like baseball, but you got historic opportunities. As I mentioned earlier, Larry Doby's granddaughter is going to be there. We expect people from the who remember Farrell, the playground, and Cameron. So there promises to be a lot of good stories, and hopefully we may even have a movie to go with that. SOPAC is going through a period of strategic planning, actually taking some time out from the very busy operations with a new schedule in place. The Executive Director, Mark Packer, and staff have actually are working with the Board of Governors and other volunteers to sit down and just go through a planning process of thinking through what's going to do the best for this building, the employees, the programming, and most importantly, the financial stability. As we have meetings each year, we take a look at what kind of subsidy we are willing to provide. They are also proactively trying to consider what they can do. So there'll be meetings for the next month or so to go over that. Also coming up is the Community Relations Committee has been working very, very hard towards providing what will hopefully be a very successful Newcomers Day. And again, reach out to any of your neighbors and contacts who are new to South Orange, primarily within this last year, but anybody's invited. We call it All Comers Newcomers Day. There's a good program planned for the public library this Sunday the 21st. So that's another thing to promote. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Just a reminder to everybody to try and get your points in. Trustee Column, Trustee Clark do a very consistently great job with this.
Oh.
If everybody else, I tried to keep it positive. If everybody else could please get your bullets in so that we could list them on the agenda that the public does see before the meeting, I think that would be really helpful. Discussion items, town-wide rehabilitation. for our decon.
I'm going back to my packet. Okay. So, Mr. Lewis, could you perhaps give an update to where the village planner ended up with the townwide rehab study?
Yeah, you recall, and I did mention it, I think in my report, when we looked at the criteria and ultimately decided rather than do a bunch of rehab studies on Irvington Avenue, we went with the townwide rehab. The draft report was submitted. I know she's notified. I think the final report is imminent, but I've seen the draft, and it, not surprisingly, given eligibility criteria of average housing stock in excess of 50 years old, and then majority of infrastructure in excess of 50 years old, we were not surprisingly found eligible on both those criteria. So the report does support, and ultimately it'll be to this board, but it'll first go back formally to the planning board, and then presumably upon their recommendation have the opportunity to designate and make that designation.
So at this point, I think for the discussion, it's getting late, so I don't want to force a discussion until people can educate themselves a little bit more about this. What's unique about this is with the town-wide designation, and it's a question that was brought up at the planning board, is do we want to keep these financial incentives to our commercial districts, or do we want to expand it to include, say, single-family homes? What's really unique about this, and there's probably a lot of resentment when you talk about pilots or tax abatements, how it always seems like these developers get incentivized to make good things happen for the town, when in reality, under this program, you could potentially offer these type of tax incentives for people to make improvements to their own home, depending what criteria we put around it. Previously on the books, as I had mentioned previously, there's Chapter 144 taxation, which is in our code, which allowed improvements up to $25,000. I don't think it was well marketed because most people I've spoken with were unfamiliar with it. I found out about it through Ellen, and those who probably had improvements found out about it also. But whatever program we decide on, obviously we would want some robust marketing. A few things for you to think about is commercial districts. Do you prioritize some commercial districts over other ones? Because you don't have to offer the full tax incentive. As Mr. Lewis had previously indicated, short-term tax abatement is limited to 5 years. Is that correct, Mr. Lewis?
Yep.
And so it's almost meant to spur something, but it's not a long-term tax abatement. There's no heavy hand in this. This is just a carrot to get people to do, hopefully, minor to major improvements. So if you want to think about that a little bit, we can have a much bigger discussion. I asked the planning board for feedback also, and Trustee Rosner, if we can add this to planning and zoning, it's something that can certainly be really, really exciting. And I'll just add also is that when you look at Mr. Lerman, who's on the planning board, said, you know, take a look at some of the finances over the past 5 years, because on first blush, it's an improvement that may not otherwise happen. But in reality, over the past year or several years, people naturally make improvements to their homes, whether it's like 5 homes or 10 homes, whatever it may be. A kitchen might have increased assessed value for $100,000 on their property. So there is actually a loss to this program. It's not anticipated revenue, but it's revenue that we can look at trends and know that we've always had. So this could have budget impacts either way, depending on looking what you're trying to accomplish from it. So something that is capped at $25,000 may not really incentivize people. It might not be enough of a carrot to incentivize larger improvements, whereas no cap and the potential to make a big improvement to the home, you'd get the permits up front. In 5 years, the property comes online, and I think even if you live next to somebody, you don't take advantage of the program, but you live next to somebody who does, having a neighbor who takes advantage ultimately improves their property, improves your property, improves the neighborhood, improves the community. So there's a few ways to think about this, and because there's not kind of like a template of like, this is what you do South Orange now with your townwide rehab, it seems like we have some flexibility to mold this into what we want it to be, or we can just say rehab, commercial districts, have at it. So that's the discussion.
So one of the things that we had talked about a while ago, I think Trustee Schnall, we had spoken a little bit about this, and I think we had discussed it at a board meeting was the idea of creating a sort of task force committee of residents that were centered around the idea of trying to work to help improve everybody's property values.
I remember that. Yep.
And this would be a really good sort of underpinning project for that group. So, I mean, I'm not familiar enough to know which of those options. I just, on a personal level, like to see a little more broken out what the pros and cons are, where caps, things like that. But conceptually, I would definitely be interested in seeing us pursue that from a residential perspective. I mean, still looking at what any of the pros and cons of that overall are, but doing so with the expectation that we would put a group of residents together that would lead that. And that it wouldn't really be as much from us, but maybe there's one or two of us that are working with them, but really it's a group of residents, and we can maybe even break it up by, by kind of area in town, and provide them with some resources to help, help them actually like create, I don't know, whether it's a website where, you list different, things that you can do to your home, what plants work well, and things, I mean, anything that people could, good contractors to use. I mean, there's a million things that people go online to find information about, and if we had a group that could help organize that information a little bit, and do so with some real incentives, it's not just kind of the fluffy stuff, I feel like that could be very successful.
Trustee Schnall, do you have anything from that meeting? I remember you talking about it, thought it was a great idea. Do you have volunteers who were interested in that?
We did have a couple of volunteers who came in, and that was one of the reasons we were trying to think of how we could form that. So I think one of the things we're doing is we're trying to find a better way on our website to bring in volunteers and promote it, and that's and this would be something to advertise or promote to have people join it. I think that's coming on board. I'd like to say in the next 6 weeks or so, we'll have that ability to better advertise volunteer and new engagement opportunities. And that way it's, we can make it available to everybody, and people could, who have a proclivity and an interest and a passion like this could join that. So this is probably something let's keep on the radar. And I think we could have it, fully functioning probably in a couple of months, but I'm not sure.
I have an idea. Trustee Rosner, why don't we add this to planning and zoning, see if we can be joined at one of the meetings with our village planner. And then once we have the pros and cons from the policy side from the Board of Trustees, then we could start bringing in, I could see realtors, other folks who just like improvements to really market this and get it out there, because it's so exciting.
And
it just
is. Sorry. The nice thing, it is, one of the nice things about this is that it's a great way to get people involved with something that has very concrete benefits to themselves and the community, but it's not like policy or political, right? It's not like, some of the committees are diving into the weeds a little bit with some more complex policy things. And for people who have had really, I mean, I don't know, I see that, I'm sure you guys, I see this stuff on Facebook all the time, people fixing up their homes, they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
They're doing really good improvements, and it'd be great to find a better way for them to help lead that charge in their neighborhood. And it's just a great way to contribute without having to, come to one of these meetings.
Well, we've been somewhat doing that in the Environmental Commission and Energy Policy. We have an individual, well, one being the solar panels, and trying to get people to put solar panels on their homes. The other is that we have a volunteer who's willing to talk about energy.
Both energy consumption and energy reduction. I would also throw in there that in both of those committees, we have also talked about incentivizing certain behavior. One of the things I think about often is stormwater management. So, Alex, to your point earlier, are there certain types of plants that you can put in your put it in the exterior of your home that will absorb more water, more stormwater runoff, frankly, turning it into a rain garden situation, or things like, I forget, the retention, other water retention items, and are there ways to incentivize those types of behavior, which ultimately help the entire community?
All right, so let's, Mark, if that's okay with you, maybe the first step, we go through planning, zoning, and then, perfect. Great. All right, so that was my super exciting, amazing discussion item.
Great, well, you've got one more super exciting, amazing discussion item.
And actually, I don't. This one is Trustee Schnall, but I got the credit for it.
Yeah, right.
Oh, boy.
And over to you.
Yeah, no, well, it's fine. It's
Nice
actually
guy.
it's what I was referring to earlier. So this is a combination of infrastructure, being software, people skills, and a vision about volunteerism and engagement. So we've talked about it in the interest of time. I think we've addressed it, and we're going to see more of it. I will tell you in the next 6 weeks, and we'll be talking about it.
And we're meeting with Sue to go through some of this, so we can update people afterwards.
Yep.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Your
Oops,
item.
sorry.
Trustee Levison, peak democracy procedures.
Yeah, Adam, you were going to address the process that we're putting in place for the peak democracy.
I thought Steve was doing a presentation on this at the next meeting.
Yeah, but
Why don't we just do it all together?
Yeah,
you want to do it that way?
yeah,
That's fine.
it is better.
Okay. Publishing public works projects, trustee Clark.
Yeah, touched on this a little bit earlier. Basically, one of the things we have been discussing in the Public Works Committee is communicating more widely and more efficiently the various projects that are going on in town, because I think there would be multiple benefits to that. Number one, there's sort of a your tax dollars at work positive thing for people. And secondly, people might want to know that they should avoid a certain area when we're working on it, that sort of thing, give people a heads up for that sort of thing. But to me, I think our town is moving forward, and we are spending money on maintaining its infrastructure as well as trying to improve the town, and I think we would do well to do a better job of communicating that to the residents. I will also state, though, that within the Public Works Committee, there is also some reticence on communicating things, specifically things like the roads. The village engineer basically has a set of criteria which he has to, frankly, in some cases, triage the number of roads we have relative to the amount of budget we have set aside in order to deal with those roads. And he is not in a hurry to more publicly publish that. And to a certain degree, that's because he understands that basically he's afraid of the sort of false promise of going out there to residents and saying, this street will be paved on such and such a date at such and such a time, because so often those things do slide due to weather or due to other circumstances. For instance, as I mentioned with the striping projects, we do have a couple of roads which he had fully intended to redo, but because some other things came up regarding the water, and changes we were hoping to make with the infrastructure there, that those roads aren't going to be addressed, and they're going to have to wait until afterwards. And so he does have concerns with basically stating to the public, this will happen at such and such a time, and then not being able to deliver on that. And so that is definitely a concern.
Walter, I'd like to weigh in on there, and I think we discussed this in the meeting that you chair that I'm a member of, and I understand his concerns about putting out a list and a schedule and setting expectations that may not be met, but we need to figure out a better way of explaining to the residents who are quite frustrated with the condition of the roads, myself included, what our real challenges are regarding capital, and give a sense of maybe a general idea of what it costs to pave a mile road, something in very simple terms that people can relate to, or a block. Let's say what it costs to pave a block. And when they, perhaps if they understand the cost of that, they may be more receptive to trying to understand what our challenges are, because our capital for roads is only $1 million. $1 million
some of that is
a year
grant. grant dollars.
And some of that's grant dollars, and that's not a lot of money based on the cost of repairing and maintaining roads. And so we need to find a way to communicate that, and then we need to have a real discussion, because some of our roads, and like in many municipalities, with a reduction in state and federal grants to help supplement that budget, here are the costs, here are the real needs, this is our limited capital, and here are some other options, but this would be the cost to the other options.
It sounds like
I think
there's-
we need to have that discussion.
And it sounds like there's sort of two issues broken up in there, right? One is that exact thing.
Right.
And so I don't know, I think I had forwarded some emails that I had back and forth with some residents that I thought was a pretty thorough explanation of kind of the budget challenges that we face. What Mr. Lewis and I had talked about was turning that into, not that my language in an email ever needs to be made more formal, but turning that into a document that will live on the new website. That will be an explanation of the entire process, how the roads get selected, why we do it the way that we do it, what used to happen, and what I think would be great, Trustee Davis Ford, is to include in that maybe some sort of like graphics, some really simple, we can kind of do the long explanation too, but, here's how much it costs for this much, here's how much it costs for this much,
Absolutely.
and just, put that information out there. I think there's another thing that Trustee Clark was talking about, and that's not talking about, this road is costing this much. It's just saying in general, these are the costs associated with this, and this is basically what our limits are from a budgetary perspective. And it sounded like there was another thing, which I think is a really great idea, which we definitely don't do, and we should do, not just for public works projects, although those are probably best suited for this, which is just doing a better job of documenting cool projects. Taking pictures, taking some videos, and so, redoing the sidewalks at Spiota Park, maybe that kind of comes halfway in between being exciting and not exciting. I think it's great because people are always stepping and slipping on the broken slate and stuff. But on some of the larger, playground installations, things like that, redoing the fields, where we spend a little bit of money, and it looks great and people appreciate it, but, document the process a little bit. And then, and that's the kind of thing, one of the things that we're gonna get into a habit of with the new website is actually, posting posts to the website. And so, like, if there were a project like that were done, we'd post that there, it would be tagged in a way that it would show up on the Public Works page, and it would show maybe some pictures of what happened, and then basically, a little bit of a project summary, when it was started, how much it cost, what departments were involved, was there grant money, and just put all that kind of stuff out there, and eventually, over the course of a couple of years, we'll have this amazing collection of all of these projects that we've done with little descriptions and photos and videos about them. And that sounded like that's kind of where you started.
Yeah, I mean, there are two pieces to this. We kind of went down the well with roads specifically, but I think in general, many people are curious about what's going on around town. They found out that I'm the public works guy, and I get asked from time to time, why is there a big mound of dirt over there? When's Spiota Park going to get some love? And many of those things could be public and to some degree have some kind of a timeline attached to them, coming soon. And some of those things, the dates will slip, weather happens, other things happen. But with the roads as well, I think it would be helpful to people to have some kind of a frame of reference for how that does happen. One of the issues, though, Deborah, is that all roads are not the same.
No. I didn't want to touch on that.
Part of the reasons we got money back was because they thought they were going to find other stuff, frankly, underneath the roads that they were going to have to deal with that would be much more expensive. Turns out, hey, happy thing.
And
wasn't
then,
as bad as they thought.
And then there's an
Turned
area,
out to be a much easier fix. Right. That's not always the case.
And then there's an area of town that, I won't go into, that there's substantial structural problems that multiply the cost of doing that road, and that's because the road was never built correctly in the first place.
Well, so these are the things that certainly the village engineer is concerned about, not wanting to misrepresent to people or overpromise, especially with limited budget funds. But Long story short, I think we could do a better job of communicating to the public what projects are upcoming, some expectation of when they'd be happening. And while I'm willing to take some of that on now, I don't know, I feel like as a formalized process, we'd have to work it out because, you know, successive trustees may not be so interested in such a thing. So we'd have to work out formalizing a process for that.
I was going to say you don't have to take it all on now, but you do have to take it all on later.
Are you looking for a straw poll from the board? Or
I guess
do you-
I guess what I'm looking for is feelings along those lines, as well as, frankly, any ideas you have as far as better ways to communicate that. Should this be something that happens in conjunction with the Public Information and Marketing Committee, that sort of thing? Because, again, a process would need to be set up. We don't, the engineering department is 3 people. It's kind of like 2.5 people, really. We don't really want them sitting around spending their time having to try to input and load stuff up to the website, or, you know, be writing press releases about, you know, when the duck pond's going to start. Again, we'd have to work out who's going to be responsible for garnering that content, in what form, how's it going to get communicated, does it have to go through the board okay first or something like that?
Maybe that can be something that we can discuss and add to our agenda for our planning meeting in October. Maybe that can be part of that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly
know if that's
our media
specific.
communications, all that kind of stuff is definitely, I think, going to end up being a topic, and hopefully we can come away with some concrete pieces there. Maybe in the meantime, that is something the Public Information and Marketing Committee can talk about, is just, you know, what are some thoughts, ideas about the best way for us to communicate the work that we're doing, especially on like actual, physical projects like that.
Well, I think we have the beginning of that process being our capital budget process. These items have to be developed and be put into our capital budget. The other is that we have in the past had done a 5-year projection of capital projects. That should be communicated, should be listed, but we're now going to go into a process of looking at what are we going to do next year, how do we fund those projects for next year. It may be that more documentation needs to be put out to the public of what we're doing, but that stuff is available. And I've been an advocate to put the matrix that Sal produces up on the website. It's just that I think we should be taking the heat about answering the questions that people have about what's been put onto the list. He's doing it on a very engineered basis and has a set of criteria of what he uses to develop that list of roads that need repair. And it's very complex. Well, in some cases, it's very complex. Like, what kind of curbs do you want to put in? Is it just a cover? What's the surface of the road? I mean, it is a whole process that Sal goes through to select what roads are on the list. But we can have input of prioritization as well. How often is it traveled? There are a lot of criteria that go, items that go into that list. But I think we're going to start the capital budget process very shortly, and it's something that we need to talk about.
Well, and that's certainly what we've been telling people, is that really the best way, where the real flexibility is, and there really isn't much, but the place where there really is any, is in the budgeting process. And basically,
Right.
How many are we going to do? You know, is we've got this many roads and we've got this much money, and put it together and see what we have.
Well, the other dimension is that we do have a small engineering department, and they're the ones who have to develop all the plans and specs and RFPs, et cetera.
So let's just make sure that when we start having our capital budget meetings, that we make some notice out to people that have kind of reached out about the roads, and I would personally think that this is a great thing for peak democracy to ask people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good one to start with.
Yep.
It's just, are people willing to spend a little bit more to do more roads?
Yep.
There's really not a right answer.
Yeah, the flip side to that always is people say, we'd rather see you cut that from the budget, move the money
Right.
over, you know.
Okay, moving on, last item, Montrose School renovation, Trustee Clark.
Yeah, this is actually a bit of business that also came through Public Works. Basically, the South Orange Maplewood School District is remodeling Montrose School to reopen it for more extended use. And this requires additional electric service upgrades. Basically, at this point, for those of you who know what this means, it is presently a building which is single-phase electricity. They've figured out that given the increased number of AV and et cetera, and people, that they'll need to upgrade that to a three-phase electrical service. So they have two options from PSE&G on how to do that. One is to run above-ground electricity from the neighborhood and bring it to the school on Clark Street. That would require placing poles along the southern portion of Clark Street, and is estimated at $73,986.90. The second option they proposed is below ground, which requires opening up several streets in the area of the river bridge northwest of the school and bringing it through those streets underground, terminating on Clark Street in front of the school, which is more expensive. It's estimated at $238,884.14. Just as a caveat, Mr. Renda suggested a third option, which was to bring power along the railroad on the east side of Meeker Street, but PSE&G said that that would be more expensive than either of the first two options, because the rail line itself is phase one, and they would also have to go through many residential properties in order to do that, and it starts to get expensive. So basically, Board of Trustee approval would be required for the above-ground option, because that is different than what we're doing anywhere else in the town. And
You mean below ground?
Sorry?
Did you say below ground?
No, above ground.
Above ground.
Because if you notice, we don't have any telephone poles.
I
They're all in the
remember.
back. There's none on the streets, and what they're talking about is putting poles on the streets and bringing it from one area.
And that's going to stretch from Montrose? Where would the new poles begin from? What's the distance?
I do not know the distance, only that it would be a portion of Clark Street.
What right-of-way are they using for the single phase right now?
For the single phase, I believe, that's a good question. I don't.
Well, why don't
know
they
that
run
it's-
it where they run the single phase? They just mount it on the same,
I do not know the answer
on the
to
same
that.
above-ground poles that they bring the single phase in on.
We had a robust discussion in the meeting, and based on what I understood, I am against the poles on the street. You know, it's not right to treat this neighborhood differently. This planning should have, all of these options should have been fully vetted by the Board of Education, and that should have been included in their budget, since they get 60%, 60 cents out of every dollar that we send them. In addition to that, if I was a resident on Clark Street, I would be up in arms regarding any additional poles, that was created an aesthetic different from the rest of the area in the neighborhood. So I really think that of the three options you talked about, underground is it, because it's less expensive than the option coming by or through the railroad. That would be me. Personally, I would not support a resolution with it going above
Yeah,
ground.
part of that discussion is that we, in general, don't put poles on the street side. They're backyard distribution. And this just introduces a slippery slope for us now allowing this, because we went through the process previously with the request for putting antenna
Yes.
on the poles, or placing
We
poles
expo-
in the right-of-way.
We expose ourselves to a huge liability,
It's not
by
the liability,
setting
is
a
that that's our
precedent.
policy.
Yeah.
We have backyard distribution.
Yeah. No, I'd be interested in finding out where the current service runs, because I can't understand why they wouldn't run the heightened service over the same right-of-way
My
that they're
guess
using.
is that the because it is single phase, that it probably comes along the railway line to the back of the building at Montrose. I don't know that for a
Yeah,
fact,
and-
but that would explain why, in order to upgrade it, they would have to, in order to
It
go
comes
to-
from a different transformer.
Yeah, yeah, but where's the source?
They're different places.
Yeah. They're different places. Okay, and where's that? I think we have to see what the options are. We need a map to take a look at that. I'll work with you. I'd love to work with you and figure out how to, what those options are. But the point that Trustee Levinson makes is correct. I mean, as soon as we start putting things on the street, we open up the door legally to all kinds of other issues. There are too many people waiting out there for us to start down that road.
And by the way, if you'll recall, PSE&G had offered, perhaps without any, without any interest in actually following up on it, but they said, oh, we could just move all your power lines to the front.
Then you'll never have a power.
Right, then you won't have any more power. That was the solution to power outages.
That is so impractical, because every house has its service in the back now.
Right.
To do that, you would have to reorient the service in every residence in South Orange. That's nonsense. You couldn't do it.
You would be happy to know I said that at a much higher volume to them when they suggested
You couldn't do
that.
it. You couldn't do it.
Well, I guess to this, the school system will need us to take action of some kind, either to make that exception, or I guess to pass some kind of a resolution, because in order to do the below ground, they'd still need permits and et cetera, go through
Sure.
the village.
And are they
No,
paying for this,
I'd
or?
love to.
No, they're paying.
I'd love to
The
work
schools-
with you on
the schools
that.
are paying. Well, we're paying for it.
Well, right, that's
Yeah.
right. And PSE&G could pay for it.
Let's work together on that.
right.
I want to help.
All right, so we
make
can
that.
get maybe an update about that for the next meeting?
Yep.
Indeed.
And just don't even consider above-ground poles. That's a no-go.
I would agree with that.
All right.
All right, well, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, cool. Unless there's anything else, do I have a motion to
Move
adjourn?
to adjourn.
Okay, moved by trustee Column.
No.
What's that?
Oh,
Public comment?
Well, it's the conference agenda
Oh,
portion.
yeah.
Because we did it during the
We
special
did
meeting.
it in special meeting, yeah.
great.
Okay, there was a motion. Second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed?
That's right.
Who's the second?